am Jessica Walker. I'm the president of the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome everybody. I think everybody knows how important our storefronts are to the city, to our vibrancy. So it is definitely something that's very, very important to our city. Obviously, these are the businesses that were really hurt the most during COVID because of their face-to-face nature. So we thought it was a really important time to check in, see what's going on with these businesses and how we can be helpful. And as a way to sort of make myself laugh, I decided to say, let's bring together all the experts in town, the people who know all the complexities of this issue, and let's only give them 8 minutes to explain it. So we're going to move very quickly, hopefully trying to extract as much information about what's going on as we can. So we're already a little behind, unfortunately, so I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to introduce our partner, TD Bank, and our host today, who has been just a stalwart of support for everything we're doing at the Chamber. So Ralph Bombacca, who is the New York lead. Please say a few words.
Thank you, Jessica. And I really do appreciate our partnership. It's been wonderful over these past several years. I think we've accomplished a lot, and we really raised the conversation. That's why today is so important. When I saw the agenda that you put together, I think it's outstanding what we're doing here. Our retail presence, you all see it, over 60 storefront locations throughout the borough of Manhattan. We couldn't be more proud of what we put out there from a quality of presence in the community and how that uplifts, I think, those corridors. We want to continue to do that. We want to continue to enhance that. And also part of our strategy around supporting small businesses is to work closely with the city. The SBS department has been a great partnership for us. And then our support of CDFIs. It's really that financial empowerment and that access to capital. That's another way to drive the success of what we all want to accomplish today. So I look forward to the dialogue. I think it will be terrific. I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot. And hopefully we'll be able to put that strategy forward here at TD Bank. So thank you for joining us. Visit our store downstairs. Get a feel of how we're bringing that out to the community. We're going to be looking at different ways to engage in the community from an impact perspective in creating community stores. So more to be evolved over time. So have a wonderful session today. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you to the board. Have a wonderful session.
So for all the speakers in the house, just want you to know there are stairs on this side, I recommend, but it's up to you if you want to take a chance. Like all right, so we have some elected officials in the House who have been so supportive and strong on this issue for many, many years. And they all have something cooking at the moment to try to help the storefronts. So we want to hear from first our Manhattan Borough President, Mark Levine.
Give it up for Jessica Walker, small business leader extraordinaire. Very grateful for the Chamber and the 120,000 small businesses you represent. And happy to be here with my colleagues, Keith Powers and Gail Brewer. You'll be hearing from them. Give them a round of applause, too. They're awesome. You cannot overstate how much retail means to the life of this borough. I don't think there's anywhere in the world that depends so much on that vitality. Unfortunately, it's been a tough decade or more on that front. Really, since the rise of online retail began providing such difficult competition, and then the brutal blow of the pandemic, and coming out of the pandemic, the rise in retail theft and the rise in costs. And in fact, one of the few growth sectors in the last year or two has been illegal pot shops, which create other problems. And so we have some work to do, but I am also seeing positive signs at the moment. I hope you'll talk about the stats today, but my sense is that in the last 3 to 6 months, for the first time, we've started to see a net increase in retail occupancy. I can confirm that in some of the bids. I hope you have borough-wide numbers, where, in other words, more stores are opening than closing, which maybe isn't remarkable, but I'm not sure if that's been true at all in the past decade. And on a place like Fifth Avenue, we had the record retail in 2023. Yesterday, there was news that Ferrari is opening a new showcase showroom in Soho, I think they paid an insane rent, like $1,000, maybe someone knows. That's the exception, though. I think one of the trends that's driving a little bit of a rebound in retail is that finally, long overdue, landlords are starting to lower the rent a little bit and or to do things like chop up big spaces to be more accommodating. And that's allowing this incredibly entrepreneurial city to rush in with new ideas. And that spirit is as strong as ever. You know, I look at a business like Hex and Company. It's like board games and a tournament space and a cafe and a bar and an after-school program. And I wouldn't have thought of that, but they did, and then they're now up to their third location. They got West Side, East Side, and now Union Square. If rents are affordable, if landlords are more accessible, more flexible, then that spirit will rise. There are some things we have to do to improve the climate for you and for these kinds of stores, and I do want to speak on that. We've got to deal with this horrible triple tragedy playing out in the streets of the human tragedy of homelessness, the rising epidemic of opioid and fentanyl addiction, and most critically, in my mind, a broken mental health system that leaves people with severe untreated mental illness in the street. And I've gone particularly deep into that piece, looking at the mental health system. And what I've seen is pretty disturbing. Manhattan has hemorrhaged hundreds of inpatient psychiatric beds over the last 15 years. We're down probably 500. And that's why it's very difficult to get someone with untreated schizophrenia into the inpatient care they need. And it's why patients who do get admitted are often released before they're truly stable. There's just not enough beds. So we wrote a report in December, which I encourage you to read. Among other things, it calls for adding 240 inpatient psychiatric beds at Bellevue and the other public hospitals, also adding a few hundred more beds on Randall's Island, where there's a state psychiatric hospital. If we do those things, it's going to change the experience of New Yorkers in the grips of severe mental illness. And I think we'll change the experience of all of us in the borough. Secondly, we need to follow what I think I'll call the Madison Square paradigm, which is investing in streetscapes, expanding pedestrian infrastructure, widening sidewalks, bringing out seating, adding cultural programming, adding more greenery, calming traffic. When you do those things, it yields incredible economic dividends. And if you look at the retail landscape in the area of Madison Square, it's booming for that reason. The office landscape as well. We need to do that in neighborhoods all over the borough. It's expensive. It's shockingly expensive. But there are good plans on the table now. Union Square has a $100 million proposal to completely reinvent the streetscapes around Union Square, which would be transformative. Hudson Square has a program already underway, several tens of millions. I don't know the exact cost. They're moving on that. They're chipping away at it. If you haven't been in Hudson Square recently, check it out. It's really impressive. Fifth Avenue has a plan to turn that into the Champs-Élysées of New York, with probably it's going to be $250 million or more. And a little bit of work to do on the financing, but it's almost there. It's going to be a game change. And then finally, I want to add my support to legislation with which Councilmember Powers has been the lead on, and I believe Councilmember Brewer has been also an early co-sponsor on, to end the commercial rent tax for retail space in Manhattan. Even that doesn't get an applause line in this crowd. Wake up, people. Coffee being served over there. Yeah, you know, it's a relic of a different time, and it only applies to one borough, not even the whole borough. It only applies to Manhattan south of 96th Street. And it just doesn't make sense with all the other drags on operating a retail space, which I mentioned, to, on top of that, have a tax that affects no part of the city. Makes no sense. So, you're going to get a big applause, council member, when you come up and speak. I feel much, much better knowing that the chamber's on it. I'm incredibly excited about the initiatives I get a little preview of that you're announcing today. Really excited about your push to get more arts, more public art into the street. I strongly support that. We're going to solve this problem together. I'm very excited for this discussion today. Thank you so much.
Okay, so now we're going to hear from the former borough president, current city council member who literally wrote the report all about storefronts, Gail Brewer.
Thank you very much, Jessica. I want to echo the borough president about how great you are. So thank you very, very much, Jessica Walker, for everything. So I do like this building. I'll tell you why. I was the borough president when we signed off on the ULURP. And my favorite is that in the actual Grand Central is a bathroom. It's called the Gail Brewer bathroom. And it's clean, and you can use it anytime you want. Thank you very much. I was my big contribution. This is a really important topic that has, I want to thank the City of Yes for economic opportunity, because it's helped us once again think about it. And I want to thank the Mayor's office and certainly everybody who's participated in that. I have a long history on this topic, always controversial, typical of Gail Brewer. When I worked for Ruth Messinger, that bill is still hanging around, which is basically the bill that talks about rent control, so to speak, for commercial. It is hated by most people, but just so you know, that bill is still out there. And then when I was city council before, we did pass what I think under Amanda Burton was a good thing, which is, again, brokers hate it, so if you're a broker, you hate it. But what it is that if you are on Amsterdam or Columbus, your storefront can only be 40 feet. It cannot be a huge CVS or, unless you're a grocery store, and then we always want you. It has been successful, I think, because a lot of stores are rented. If you're already there as a CVS or, I hate these big drugstores, sorry, just so you know, then you are grandfathered in. On Broadway, a bank can only be 25 feet as it is on the other avenues, but everything else is fine. And I will note that Broadway is pretty vacant now in terms of some of those large storefronts. So that was something that I passed. And then as borough president, thanks to Jessica Walker and others, we had a small business task force, and we tried to iron out not to have the earlier bill that I mentioned, the survival bill as it's called, but try to figure out some of the ways that we can address the empty storefronts. So I do have a long history. It's really, really hard. 100% support getting rid of the tax that goes from Murray to 96th Street and no place else in the city. So there's a couple of things that I added to what the City of Yes was talking about. I do think that we need to look at, as you'll hear earlier, all of the art issues. It's interesting, a lot of storefront owners are calling me saying, can't you put some art in the vacancies? And I know you'll hear later from Anita Durst and all the work she's done with Shoshama and Art on the Avenue from Barbara Anderson. I will say that that's a small aspect, but it should be mandated. I know that sounds like, oh, I don't want to mandate anything. But I do think that, I know in one case, Shoshama came into a vacant storefront run by a nonprofit building, and it has made all the difference in the world. All the homelessness, the garbage, everything went away, and it's a very vibrant streetscape as a result. So I feel very, very strongly about that. I also want to just talk about some of the new aspects of our streets. We have these, what I call the dark stores, but they're also called micro-fulfillment centers, and I hate them. I just want to let you know. So these are the large ones. I don't know why you would need pepper in the middle of the night and somebody to come deliver it, but that's kind of their business model. And when you have these stores, sometimes you can't go in them. There is a issue about, in terms of our stores, what is the law in terms of what windows can look like? Because the issue is, if you're in a grocery store, and I love grocery stores and want as many as possible, they do cover over their, because probably they need that space, and so the windows are not a place to have people looking in. But I want to just say we need, as a city, to figure out what is the law on stores, windows, and whether they are or not covered. It does not seem to be clear. I do want to say also we have this new micro-distribution center issue with lithium-ion batteries. And actually some of these dark stores do in fact have the the batteries stored in them because they use the e-bikes to deliver. A little bit scary if you're living above. And the same thing is just generally, whether it's Pop Wheels, which is a new, wonderful startup in Brooklyn that I hope comes to Manhattan. I think it is, and I want it on the west side. They have the idea of basically a vending machine, put the battery in and you take it out. It's always new and it's always what it should be. I mention all of this because in addition, thanks to the city, I know there's a discussion about how to get some of these large 18-wheelers off the streets. And how do you do that at the same time having some kind of a bicycle, e-bike thing take from wherever the distribution center to the customer? All of this is trying to figure out as you're dealing with vacancy, storefronts, streetscape, etc. It's very, very hard to put all of this together, but I think these are some of the issues that we're trying to address. I do want to talk a little bit about this. Also, just even something called loading docks. You know, in some places in the city, there is again, thinking about the future, there is a old factory, used to bring in the trucks, and there is a curb cut that would bring the trucks in. God forbid you get rid of that. I remember sometimes stores moving in there, they wanted to get rid of it, and the owner said no, because he would never, ever, ever, ever go through DOT to get another one in case he needed it. So these things need to be more flexible in terms of streetscape. I'm thinking about the future. There's also a big discussion for stores and commercial to be on campuses, which is a good idea, but I think the federal government has something to say about it. I've always said that NYC should have commercial. They have none. They're not allowed to. Same thing with 202s, which are the senior buildings that paid by the federal government. We need to work on that. Nothing better than a low-cost grocery store, service store, etc., on these campuses. And you know, the city should in fact make them low rent, but so far, discussion, nothing happening. I will also say, by the way, New York City, and I'm sorry if there are people here who are in charge of that, but you have a lot of commercial space that is not rented. I'm just pointing that out. I also want to just say, there's a whole issue about finding the address. I don't know about you, but I'm often running around trying to see where is this building because there's no address. So I did pass a law, it's not being enforced, that says that every single front door, service door has to have an address on it. And I think it's not actually being enforced, and we're going to work to do that. But I just want to say that is a small item, but in terms of visitors, ambulances, police department, and just everyday New Yorkers trying to figure out where they're going, we need to work on that as an address. And I just want to go back to the arts for a minute. I know that it is very challenging to, mandate anything, but it does seem to me that the combination of the arts and vacancies, until we figure out how to address them, is something to be more focused on. It's not clear why these vacancies, and there may be people in the room. I have checked with the feds, the state, and the city. There's no abatement for having 7 years of a vacant store or 2 years of a vacant store. There's no, and then there may be some write-off on your taxes, but nothing specific. Every owner says they're usually waiting for higher rents. And the trouble with the vacancies, as we know, it brings the homeless, it brings the trash, it brings all the issues, and the store next door is hurt badly because there's no activity to help you as that storekeeper. There is always a suggestion that we have to go to Albany to tax the vacancy. And that's very controversial, but I think it should at least be discussed because they stay empty for years, obviously with lots of discussion, how much time, is it really relevant, etc. So I'm here to say exciting that this wonderful conference is here today. Only Jessica Walker could pull this off with the wonderful group that she has brought together. Zoning is what I think some of the discussions is going to be taking place on the city of Yes. So it's between, you just have to think to complete. I always worry, because I'm a big Amanda Burton fan along those lines, what does the streetscape look like? How is it that the person walking by is feeling about that streetscape? What can we do about the vacancies that is real and that doesn't hurt anybody but has a real sense of figuring out how to deal with them? And I just want to mention again the commercial rent that exists. We also have a bill that says at least the grocery store should not be taxed. God knows, usually grocery stores 1% is what you make on them. And they can barely survive in that area. So we need to have at least the grocery stores, if not the full elimination of the commercial rent tax. Thank you very much, and I look forward to meeting with you. I love being controversial. Thank you.
Okay. And now we come to our council member who has been so helpful, especially during COVID, on so many issues around CRT, all kinds of things. So thank you so much to City Council Member Keith Powers.
Thank you.
I think Councilmember Brewer has set a new standard. I'm going to end everything with non-controversial as my broad statement at the end of it. Nice to see everyone. Thank you for spending your morning with us. Welcome to District 4. I'm City Council Member here, Keith Powers. They've touched upon a lot, so I'll be really brief. But I do want to thank both my colleagues, because when we talk about small businesses and storefronts and neighborhood issues that affect our small businesses, you have no two better champions than our Borough President, Mark Levine, and my colleague, Councilmember Brewer, who every time I go and look for an issue that I can work on, I find Mark Levine and Gail Brewer already there and doing a lot of work on it. But it's great to have partners who are working on these issues. One thing that, well, first of all, we mentioned the commercial rent tax bill. I want to thank the Chamber, and I want to thank the Hospitality Alliance, because during COVID, as storefronts and small businesses were struggling, we got together to talk about what exactly we could do, and we introduced a bill in the City Council that would repeal the commercial rent tax for storefronts here in New York, in Manhattan, the ones that are affected by it, to give not only the financial assistance, but I think it was really important to also make sure that small businesses saw government reaching out and helping them at such a critical moment in time. And throughout that entire conversation, we talked about issues like commercial rent tax, outdoor dining, things like that, having their leadership, I'm also pointing at Riggi, but of course Jessica, to lead the way and make sure our businesses could stay afloat was remarkable. So I just want to give them all a big round of applause for everything they did. And I want to thank TD Bank and all the folks who have made this Chamber of Commerce the best one that we have here in the city. Just a few more issues I want to talk about. So number one is we reintroduced that bill, that commercial rent tax bill, at the last stated meeting. So we are going to be working very hard to get something done. I have always said that commercial rent tax, which penalizes businesses south of 96th Street in Manhattan only, feels so unfair, anti-competitive, and really ignores the realities on the ground when it comes to our small businesses. So number one is we introduced that bill 2 weeks ago. It was one of the first bills we introduced in this new session, and we're going to be working very hard with Councilmember Brewer and my colleagues to make sure we get something like that passed or do something to help repeal further the commercial rent tax in the next 2 years. Second is we are introducing a package of legislation. We're reintroducing a package of legislation today that I've been working on with the Borough President, who did a great, outstanding report on the impact of scaffolding in our city. And I was talking to Kim over here earlier, who was telling me her story about being a business on the Upper West Side, right? And the impact, 2.5 years of living under scaffolding as a small business. And that's coming after COVID, when you are trying to get your business and your livelihood back up and running. You're trying to get people to recognize your small business in their neighborhood, maybe their new neighborhood, and they need to know that you're there. And to then have scaffolding show up is a killer for small businesses. And the reason I got into this issue actually is years ago, I had a small business, a friend who owned a small business, a coffee shop, who told me the mathematics on owning a coffee shop in Manhattan, and that minor dent can have such a drastic impact on your ability to stay open. We did a report with the Borough President last year on the impact, not just on small businesses, but also on property owners, on neighborhoods, on communities, on the skyline, and have issued a number of recommendations and are working on that. We're introducing that package of legislation today in the City Council, and we are working very hard to get that heard and get that passed. We have a very good partner in the mayor, I should note too, who's been working diligently on that. We're also introducing a piece of legislation today you've probably read about to tackle the illegal cannabis stores that are all over our city. And yes, I know they are taking up storefront space and they are taking up lots of space here in the city, but they are something we get complaints about almost every single day. And we are introducing a bill that would actually use a nuisance abatement law that has been so effective in other instances to be able to close those stores down in real time, not go through a 7-8 month process where they have to pay fines and then come back and pay fines and they get to reopen. This would close them down while they go through that process and hopefully put an end to those illegal cannabis stores. And I think that will be a way to help give confidence back to people about what's in their neighborhood, what's happening to their communities as well. We are going to be continuing to work on legislation that we've introduced and passed in the past years to help our bars and our restaurants. We did a bill a couple of years ago on the liquor license tax, which is another tax that I found out about. I see Andrew nodding. Another tax on businesses, small businesses here in the city, that is simply for the right to have a state-issued permit. The city of New York then comes and charges you a few extra $100 on that license every year. If you don't pay it, because why would you know about it? That you have to pay the city for a state license. It will hold up every other permit you need to get here in the city. So we suspended that, I should say, 2 years ago. We're reintroducing that bill. We just reintroduced that bill to also give our local cafes and restaurants and bars and nightlife another sense that we're here to help and that we're actually trying to do something for them. And lastly, I'll just plug on storefronts across the city. There are lots of unneeded and unnecessary regulations, things that impact things like nightlife, manufacturing, small business owners all across the city. We are going to be voting on and bringing to the city council very shortly the mayor's plan around economic opportunity that would repeal a lot of these unnecessary regulations that burden opening of businesses, operating a business here, and are really outdated and overdue. And I've been out there testifying in support of doing that because I think it's really important we start modernizing our laws and making it a little bit easier to make sense of what it means to operate a business here in the city. So I would also implore everyone here to take a look at those and add your support to that if you see it as impactful to your businesses as well. And I think the more we can modernize our laws and get out of the way in instances where it doesn't make sense, I think the better. But I just want to say thank you as always to the Chamber, because when I have an issue or a phone call, I need to talk about what's happening here in the real world, your team has been so helpful, but also your advocacy, coming to us with ideas about how we can do better and help is really the thing that we need as elected officials to hear from the real voices on the ground. So thank you, everyone. Congratulations always on all the great work you're doing, and thanks everyone for having us, and we look forward to working together this year.
So we're going to move into the current state of storefronts, hear a lot of data. And I'm gonna not keep coming up and down. I'm just wasting time. So we're gonna just go from speaker to speaker. So hopefully you know your turn and you can just come on up. We'll start with Raul.
All right. Thanks, Jessica, and thanks to the Chamber for having us today. For those who don't know me, I'm the state deputy controller for the city of New York, which obviously
Will you come closer to the mic?
sorry about that. That better? The public officials are much better than I am. So we obviously oversee the city's finances and economic trajectory. One of the first things that Controller Napoli asked me to do was look at the hard-hit industries in the city when I came on. We'll run through a little bit of that impact. We won't go too long on that. Talk about taxable sales, look at a macro level, talk about the employment in these major sectors. I added arts, entertainment, recreation because they do take up some storefronts in our city, and talk a little bit about real estate and the future considerations. So on the first, I don't need to go through exactly what the pandemic did. Everybody knows that there was a halt of in-person economic activity. There was a shift even in population, even if it was temporary. We know that bodies moving around the city, foot traffic went down substantially, by some measures 90%. If you use the MTA ridership, if you use foot traffic from Placer AI, all of these show just substantial drops, and we've slowly come back over time since that April and May of 2020. There's an important understanding in who exactly came back and when. Obviously, nobody was going out for leisure or business early on, but we did see some leisure travel over the summer come back of 2020. Business travel took longer. Obviously, domestic tourism came back more quickly than international tourism. That's important because international tourists spend more than domestic tourists. In terms of foot traffic, we see that there was a sustained reduction, right? So even when people did come back, there were some certain concerns about the perception of reality in terms of crime. There was obviously a concern over the virus and transmission. There were spikes and ups and downs in terms of that, and that really hampered the recovery and the foot traffic needed to come to storefronts. And there was actually a demand shift in goods and services. Obviously, this is a city that even before the pandemic had led a shift to service-based consumption. The pandemic really pushed us back to goods-based consumption. Everybody had to buy new things for their homes or to kind of stay home and be able to deal with that. And so we did see a shift in that. And finally, thanks to, quite frankly, the work of many folks here, we did get Congress to pass, obviously, the first round of PPP, but even a second round of PPP, Restaurant Revitalization Fund, the Shuttered Venues Operating Grant. There were substantial funds that came from this. $31 billion plus to the city from PPP, over $2.5 billion from restaurant revitalization, and over $1.3 billion from shuttered venues. Despite those significant numbers, I'll just note that a lot of businesses did not receive support, and it took quite some time for them to receive that support by 2021. And we'll see in the data that some of the recovery is very much related to that funding. So this goes to the high level, taxable sales, if you don't know. Whatever sales are taxed are in this number. This is the first 3 quarters because we don't have data for the last quarter of the most recent year. But you'll see there was a substantial drop, about 30% from the year prior to the pandemic to the pandemic year. That 30% was across all sectors. But we will note that retail trade, which is sort of your regular storefront thoughts, clothing, jewelry stores, grocery stores, was severely impacted. But not as impacted as restaurants, which saw a much larger substantial dip. And actually, by the time we came to what is mostly the year of 2021, retail had bounced back. Okay, and that's related to a few things, not just the foot traffic, but there was great inflation during that time. The price inflation did have the impact of increasing the amount of sales in some instances. But we did not see restaurants come back during that time. They did not come back to this 2022 year. We didn't see arts, entertainment, recreation until that time either. Obviously, this took time for businesses to reopen, for the restrictions on those businesses to actually start to come off, and for people to feel comfortable coming out of their homes and dine locally and without masks and on all those changes that came over time. I do want to note that retail and restaurants make up about 50% of this taxable sales number, so it's a substantial contributor, obviously, to our sales tax here. Good news was the recovery in retail early. What we've seen more recently is a more moderated growth. This is not surprising. If you look statewide, the rest of the state actually dropped less than we did during the pandemic, but then moderated over time. We're starting to finally see that moderation now that we've seen the return in taxable sales. If you look at that moderation, though, retail trade as a sector is about flat year over year. So we're seeing sort of flattening in that space. And again, that's clothing stores, grocery stores, jewelry stores, electronic stores. But we are seeing restaurants, arts and entertainment, recreation businesses continue to grow. So that's where the growth is sort of coming from in this most recent year. The hope here, of course, is that while we do have a return in traffic, we're not necessarily at the level we'd want to be to see healthy growth over the next few years. That brings me to our just employment. Obviously, we use unemployment as an indicator of health in the industry. Not surprisingly, you'll see that restaurants are the closest to what we'll call pre-pandemic levels. They're pretty close right now. That's a function of the fact that they have, we've seen a good return in this space. This is a citywide number. I did look at Manhattan more focused. It is lower than the rest of the city, as you might imagine, but it is still coming back. Retail has stalled out a bit. As I like to say about the pandemic, in a number of spaces, the pandemic did not necessarily completely alter the trajectory we were seeing before. It often was an extension of what we were seeing pre-pandemic. If you look at the numbers, we were kind of flat on retail even before the pandemic. We kind of stalled out. And we're seeing what might be the new normal. We'll see if we continue to see growth here. Hopefully an increase in tourism will shoot that number up, but we are starting to see a flattening in the retail space in terms of employment. And that we're not necessarily seeing that as much in the restaurants and arts and entertainment and recreation space. I also put tourism on here, which is sort of a mix of all of these, plus your taxi drivers and your hotel workers. And we can see tourism continues to return, but tourism is not expected back. One other thing which is noticeable here in the employment trend is you can see that what the shift is a little bit experiential. And this isn't surprising if you look across the country. Malls are shifting to this more experience-based approach. That is eating, drinking, doing things is what we do here in New York City. We seem to be returning in that way, whereas retail, again, where you go in and buy something is flattening out a little bit and maybe made up by the online shopping we've discussed, or some folks have discussed here so far. I also want to know, I don't have the numbers up here, but in terms of firm growth, it's very close to this. We're seeing firm growth, which obviously fills the retail space. Continued growth in the restaurant space, continued growth in the arts, entertainment, recreation space. Not so much in retail. We've actually seen a decline over the last year in Manhattan. The hope is that some of these mixed use retail spaces, the ones that are your daycare, you can get a drink after and play video games or whatever it is, those might be taking up some of this space as well. I want to talk a little bit about what the demand push was here. So I mentioned tourism. Obviously, the number of annual visitors to New York, as you probably know, is not yet where it was, but we are inching closer. The hope was that 2024 initially would be the year where we return to 66 million plus visitors. It's not right now forecast that way. We're now forecast for 2025. That goes for basically every type of visitor, domestic, international, business, leisure. But it is true that international and business are lagging further than the domestic and leisure travelers. So, and that's important because those are big spenders and they're going to continue to contribute to the sales and revenue growth needed for the retail storefronts. I wanted to talk a little about freight volumes only because we do know inventories that were built up during the pandemic. Obviously, these are what's being sold in our stores. We have seen that come down a little bit. That can be a leading indicator of where we're going. And then I want to talk about office employment, which boomed during the pandemic. Obviously, a lot of folks were working from home initially. Maybe they're coming in 2-3 days a week now, maybe 4 or 5 for some sectors. But the office employment, obviously, that's the commutation. Folks who are eating lunch here, they're picking up something for their spouse on the way home, whatever it is, that are driving this spending. There was massive growth, and keep in mind when you're talking about foot traffic, you're not just talking about are we seeing the return of 5 days a week. We could see growth in the overall office sector that just by virtue of having a larger office sector, you have more people walking around, even if they're in 4 days a week, right? So this number is really key for sort of driving demand. One thing that certainly is worth watching is whether or not this continues to flatten out. Certain sectors may have overhired. We're seeing a little bit of a culling in those spaces. We'll see if that turns around next year. But if this number does not pick up a little bit, that could be an area of softening, and it might push more need into the tourism space in terms of driving demand. So I talked about office employment, freight, and tourism. And then we do a report on the securities sector every year and bonuses every year because it's so important. It's 20-25% of disposable income in the city. It's even more when you talk about financial services as a whole. This is also showing that sort of, what was almost an unprecedented boost due to the pandemic stimulus that happened in 21 and 22 has sort of abated now. We are seeing profitability normalize. Whatever you're going to spend from your bonuses, whether it be a large office party or a big dinner for yourself or Ferrari, that clearly is something that needs to be taken into account. We're thinking about, again, where demand is going, whether or not we might see some softening or a change, at least in where demand will be coming from over the next year or two. In terms of I'm going to push to real estate a little bit. The retail vacancies have improved. Everybody mentioned it. We've seen a few quarters of improvement now, which is great. Restaurants have been a huge driver of that, actually. We talk a little bit about where the growth is here. Food and beverages, according to the real estate reports, a real driver of that. We are seeing some change in space, which people wiser than me in the space can speak to. But I think this also, even the real estate piece of this speaks to the shift a little bit to the experiential uses of storefronts. And I know Council Member Brewer left, but this use of space for almost pop-up art space, pop-up storefront space that stays for a short period of time, not just Spirit Halloween, but even other things, and how that can drive a short-term seasonal retail storefront occupancy. So we've, again, gross availability is improved in all these spaces. There are certain markets, they seem to be a little bit more affordable markets that have done well, but they are seeing high foot traffic. So we talked about Fifth Avenue, the lower piece of Fifth Avenue, which is a little cheaper than the upper piece. Soho, Flatiron, we know that people are returning to these areas. You can look at our dashboards in terms of not just these industry sector numbers, but the MTA ridership experience. We are seeing a higher return in ridership in these areas, and that's translating to foot traffic, which is translating to occupancy. We're not seeing as much of that in the Herald Square and Lower Manhattan area. Lower Manhattan is kind of a little piece of it's a little further away from the major commuting hubs. Borough President, we mentioned the mental health issue. There's obviously some questions over crime or mental health, or that maybe creating a perception of street safety being an issue, and that might be slowing some of the occupancy in some of these areas. So we know that that's an area we can see improvement on over time. And then, listen, at the end of the day, somebody talked about the cost of all of this adding up. The asking rents are below 2019 levels. That is a boost for folks who are looking for space. There's some space where the vacancy is coming down a lot. Second gen restaurant space is one example. Again, restaurant space has been a driver. The hope is that we can reconfigure some of these spaces to make them accessible to these new businesses. And finally, I wanted to do high level concerns. Affordability, both for the businesses themselves, being of the city, right? Who's here and what are they spending on? Obviously, we want to continue to see a return in residents, commuters, and tourism. I was listening to an argument over whether or not we had stalled out in this way. I'll just note December and January are bad months to try to figure out what's happening with return. Better to look at March, April, and May and see where we end up if we actually do see the return keep coming. I talked about crime. I'm sure people here will have better understanding of retail threats, but generally, obviously, retail theft is an issue. Safety on the streets remains critical to making sure foot traffic is there. Future trajectory of interest rates, which, that's macro questions, and geopolitical conflict. I know that sounds a little bit out there, but whether or not tourists return means that they're coming from other countries in a lot of places, and that conflict does matter. And then areas to build on. Certainly that tourism is set to return in 25. Consumer spending does remain healthy despite all the headwinds, and that's been good news. Luxury land leasing in the highly trafficked corridors looks strong. That suggests that some of this white collar growth over time does continue to have legs, and that residential housing demand, obviously there'll be a shift in where people spend their time if they're living more in the city, and that would shift the retail storefront landscape. You can find a lot of this data on our website, on the Controller's website, and we'd be happy to chat about it if you guys ever have questions. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Keith DeCoster, Director of Market Data and Policy at Real Estate Board of New York. Can everybody hear me? Is that better? So thank you so much for the invite here. It's a real pleasure to be here speaking on behalf of Real Estate Board of New York. I feel like everybody here is staunchly in the corner of retail storefronts. Everybody's behind storefronts, so it's great to see this discussion. As many of the speakers have already said, this is so critical to our city. There's 140,000 storefronts across the city. They touch every community, every neighborhood. They're so much of a part of why people want to live here and want to visit here as well. So Real Estate Board of New York, we've been producing a retail report for Manhattan that goes back about 20 years. I've been at Revenue for about 2 years, so I only can claim a little bit of a credit for the report. A lot of the content comes from brokers, top retail brokers across the city. We've also been reaching out to local bids and community organizations as well. So thank you to those of you who contribute to the report. So I'm going to give some high-level takeaways on what the retail report shows. I'm going to focus quite a bit on demand drivers and what led the comeback and some deficiencies as well in the demand drivers. I think the very positive key takeaway, though, is that retail is certainly a much-needed bright spot in commercial real estate. Currently, the last 18 months, you've seen what I would call yet again, a remarkable rally in New York City's retail. There's certainly challenges that the sector faces, though, and you're going to hear quite a bit, I think, about costs and quality of life. But if there is a sector, I think, that is equipped and in the condition to deal with challenges, it's certainly the retail sector, between e-commerce and also COVID. The retail sector is in prime fighting condition to face these. That's why, again, it's so good to see all of you in retail's corner. I think that certain industries and certain sectors, whether it's healthcare, Gail was talking about grocery stores that have very low operating margins, childcare, community organizations in particular need a lot of assistance and a lot of folks in their corner, whether it's abatements or credits. But in terms of what led the comeback in the leasing drivers, it's interesting, just this time 2 years ago, actually, which to me seems like it was much longer ago, the CDC was about to release changes to masks, recommendations that indoor dining, it was 2 years ago, actually, to the day that they said that I think 70% of folks could dine indoors if they've had a vaccination without a mask. New York State was about to release changes to mask for schools. So if you look at what happened shortly afterwards in terms of New York City, there's a lot of factors that drove this remarkable rally in terms of storefronts and retail. But by that spring and summer, tourism was surging. Hotel occupancy was at 87% by that June, which was the highest in the country. And who would have thought that it'd be at 87%, particularly just coming out of Omicron? And leasing demand never looked back following, the kind of that pivotal point in time. The residents had already come back, but by that spring and summer, if you walked around on Fifth Avenue, the tourists were back, and leasing activity has surged since then. Leasing in 2023 was the strongest it has been in years. Certainly not as robust and not back as fully as it was pre-pandemic, but it's a testament to Manhattan's renewed appeal. It's also the reality, though, that it had very much to do with the opportunity, the extensive vacancy, the decimation from COVID. So there was so much opportunity in the market, and the rents were recalibrated and reset. And the concessions, if you looked at what property owners were doing to induce leases, were just truly unprecedented in terms of doing things like building out space, buying equipment for restaurants. Some of that opportunity has gone away as leasing has surged, particularly in the high streets. But today, across the 17 corridors that we track, 15 of those 17 corridors, the rent is still 20 to 40% below its historical averages. It's really created a more reasonable environment, again, setting aside a handful of corridors. And this created, exceptional opportunity that proved irresistible to just a broad-based range of retailers. Luxury has certainly led, as Rahul was talking about, a lot of that. In tourism and international luxury retail is so critical, not just in terms of the amount of spending, but also if you think of the cross-fertilization that occurs between somebody like Prada deciding that they're going to come back. They're not just going to come back, but they're actually going to buy properties. And because they have, tourists coming from Italy, coming to New York, time and again, if you look at Madison, Soho, it's a case of international and also some domestic luxury retailer, just millions of dollars that they're spending on flagship and build out. Soho and Madison Avenue 2 years ago, you could have found 50, 40 vacant storefronts. Almost every other store was vacant. Today, that space is mostly leased up. You're down to 10 or 20, vacant storefronts. And again, those retailers are the one sector that is spending extensively on flagships. You do have other neighborhoods, not just luxury retail, where, again, because of all that vacant space and the reset of rents, that you had family-owned businesses as well who were able to expand, add their second or third business on the Upper East Side or the Upper West Side. You had retailers who, for years and years, had said, I'm not going to go into Manhattan. It's just too costly. It's, the challenges in permitting are too high, who decided to establish a foothold in New York because of the reduced rent. So that's the positive. Retail is a bright spot, as I'm sure you all know, in commercial real estate right now. But there are still areas that lag. Times Square, Herald Square, certainly Midtown, Lexington Avenue, 3rd Avenue. There's been some turnover in some residential areas as well. Why are those areas lagging? It's because the core drivers of retail demand are still not back 100%. So tourism is down about 10%. Among the core drivers, it's actually been one of the strongest contributors. E-commerce is even more entrenched. I was reading that Amazon delivers 2.4 million packages. Wouldn't be surprising if it was billion. 2.4 million packages a day in New York City. So e-commerce has become even more entrenched, although it is important to recognize that part of that entrenchment comes through brick and mortar. So brick and mortar has learned how to integrate some of that e-commerce in. The office sector, of course, is incredibly important, depending upon which day of the week that you pick. Those commuters who came into the city and spent every day are 30 or 40, 50% lower on any given day. So Midtown East, Lexington, 3rd Avenue. And, to Rahul's point, you have to be really careful with those numbers. Not to plug our own data, but we have done some interesting work together with Placer, really drilling down deep into the different nuances of visitation. But the office sector is really critical. The last factor I would point out is that the kind of leaner, meaner business model, kind of a middleweight or featherweight model of a retailer, as opposed to a heavyweight, has been retained by a lot of businesses. So if you look at the retail that has expanded across the city, tends to be smaller footprint. This is why landlords are subdividing the space. Even the heavyweights that made a comeback, very positive stories like Century 21, for example, they reopened with a smaller footprint. So, there's negatives to that in terms of the number of employees, and the impact of that recovery. But actually, there's potential there for storefronts, I think, to fill a lot of that space. I'll just close again with a note of gratitude for folks who are in the corner of alleviating the costs for the retail sector. Again, as Gail was saying, grocery stores are a perfect example of a critical service that we need in the city, particularly if we're going to build more residential. Eventually, you need grocery stores, you need local service, you need arts, you need not just luxury retail. And those are where the challenge is that even at times luxury retail finds challenging to deal with. Those sectors need even more help. So, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. How's it going? It's great to be here. I want to thank Jessica and Nadia and everybody from the Chamber for having me here. What a great event. What an important topic. I'm Jonathan Bowles. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for an Urban Future. If you don't know the Center, we're a think tank focused on New York City. We focus on creating a stronger and more equitable economy in New York and expanding economic opportunity for all New Yorkers. And I think the reason I'm here is because for 16 years now, my colleagues and I at the Center for an Urban Future have been publishing an annual report that tracks the number of chain store locations in all 5 boroughs, called State of the Chains. And for the first decade that we did this report, again, it's been 16 years now, and I've been there every year, not to date myself or anything, but for the first 10 years, the number of chain stores just kept going up and up and up. And, it was almost so boring. Like pretty much the only substantive question that we got asked was, how many Dunkin' Donuts are there this year? By the way, any guesses on how many Dunkin' Donuts there are in New York City? There's 619 this year, so there's a lot of Dunkin' Donuts. As you can see from this graphic, things have changed a bit in more recent years. And, I guess maybe I have a slightly more pessimistic or kind of concerning view of the retail sector than some of the previous speakers. And this slide shows that you could see that this is, if you can see the kind of percentage change every year in our study. In the first several years, first decade pretty much, every year, no matter what was happening in New York City's economy, there was an increase in chains. Even through the Great Recession, there was an increase in the number of chain stores year over year. But since then, and even before the pandemic, 4 of the past 6 years, we've had declines in the year over year number of chain stores in New York City. And the 2 years where we've had increases, 2021 and 22, were the years right after such a huge drop from the pandemic. So there was it was bound to be some kind of rebound from the pandemic, and that's what we've seen. But in this most recent year, 2023, and we published our most recent study just in December, we found a 3.1% decline in the number of chain stores in New York City. So we have a different retail picture today, I think, as you all know, and as what a lot of the speakers have already said. So you can see here, this is in all 5 boroughs, but New York City overall had a 3.1% decline in the number of chain stores, but it was pretty uniform over the past year. All the boroughs had pretty much the same decline in chain stores. And This year's decline was, I think, a bit surprising and concerning to us because the pullback occurred even as the city had notable increases in the number of people.
I would like to change it because people on the back are complaining that they cannot hear anymore.
Apologies if you couldn't hear. I know that the key question, there was 619 Dunkin' Donuts discontinued. But it was concerning, the fact that just this past year we saw a decline of 3% in the number of chain stores because so much else in the economy was really picking up. You know, the number of people coming back to offices, number of people using the subways, jobs overall in the city were up. There's so much going good in New York City's economy right now, and I'm a real optimist about New York, but I think that this sector is having some kind of continued challenges. I think it was also concerning for us that the decline occurred even when most national retailers in New York City just haven't even come close to fully recovering from where they were pre-pandemic. Although there was modest growth in chain stores in 2021 and 2022, the number of chain stores in the city in November of this year, November of 2023, was still 13.8% below the total from late 2019. So about 1,100 fewer stores than right before the pandemic. And you can see that our report is really focused on chains, but it mirrors the broader trends that we're seeing in employment in New York City's retail sector, and I think kind of mirrors some of the broader challenges that retailers are facing in New York City. So you can see here, and I know Rahul had the same stat, that in December, the most recent a month for which we have data on retail employment in New York City, the retail sector in New York City has 15% fewer jobs than right before the pandemic. So December 2019 to December 2023, that's a decline of 54,600 jobs, from 363,000 to 308,000. 54,000, that's a significant number of jobs, and we're about 4 years in from the start of the pandemic, and we're still kind of at this level. And as we know, so much else is going well in New York City. We've fully recovered overall in the city's economy, but retail is still down by about 15%. So with chains, the challenges run pretty deep. More than half of the retailers that were featured in our 2019 State of the Chains report, so the report right before the pandemic, have fewer locations than they did today, than they did before the pandemic. They have fewer locations today than then. 11.2% of the chains from that 2019 report no longer have any stores here. And all 8 of the city's largest chain retailers have fewer locations in the city today. So what's happening here? Obviously, I think changes in how we work, hybrid work, with most workers still coming to the office no more than 3 days a week, has an impact. It's hampering sales for many retailers, and I think we're especially seeing that in our business districts. So this year, for instance, the 6 zip codes across the city with the biggest declines in chain stores were all in Midtown, downtown Brooklyn, Union Square, and Soho. And Manhattan had the slowest recovery. If you look kind of pre-pandemic to the present, Manhattan has had kind of by far the slowest recovery, about 545 fewer stores in Manhattan today than before the pandemic. And Manhattan saw declines in pretty much all retail categories, but I think it's notable that, and not surprising, that a bunch of lunch spots were among the biggest decliners. So just a couple of examples. Hale and Hardy Soups closed all 18 Manhattan stores since 2019. Pret a Manger has 15 fewer stores. Le Pain Quotidien has 9 fewer. Potbelly is down 6 stores since then. Dig In has 5 fewer, and Witchcraft closed all 4 of its Manhattan stores. Those are just Manhattan numbers from pre-pandemic to today. Also, the impact on Manhattan is reflected in jobs numbers. So these charts show that in 2014, Manhattan was home to 48.3% of all retail jobs in the city. Today, Manhattan's share is 41.4%. So just less than a decade, a pretty significant decline in Manhattan's kind of dominance in the retail sector. While fewer people are coming into the office certainly has been a factor, especially for Manhattan's business districts. We think e-commerce is arguably a bigger part of the problem citywide. For roughly 5-6 years now, as we've been doing this State of the Chains report, well before the pandemic, merchandise retailers have accounted for an outsized share of the declines in chain stores. And that trend continued this year. Cell phone stores, pharmacies accounted for the greatest losses, but merchandise retailers selling clothing, shoes, and luggage also had notable declines. To give you just a few snapshots, I mean, this is pretty stark. Maybe this is good news for Gail Brewer. I'm not a fan of those big pharmacies, but pretty stark. Just like these kind of three big drugstore chains going from 656 a little less than a decade ago to 435. Again, maybe this is good news for some folks that don't like all those drugstores, and they were on a lot of the same corners. But there's been a pretty significant decline, and that decline, it seems like it's actually accelerating these days according to our data. Also, this is just a few other kind of merchandise retailers that we did a snapshot just looking over the last 10 years. And you can see, again, clothing, shoes, accessories, cosmetics, luggage. You know, a lot of these stores, they're still around, but their numbers are a lot smaller, and we think this, e-commerce, online shopping has a lot to do with it. And of course, a lot of big merchandise retailers have shut down completely. It wasn't that long ago where Radio Shack and Payless both had 100 stores plus in New York City. A bunch of those have shut down, and this is another kind of a snapshot of before the pandemic to today in terms of employment, and you could see. The sectors, these are all the different kind of subfields within retail, and you can see, again, it's those merchandise sectors, whereas food and beverage is only down 4% pre-pandemic to now. Clothing stores, department stores, sporting goods stores have had the biggest declines. Again, those are kind of the areas where they're kind of in competition with e-commerce. One last indication. I think this is interesting. I loved Rahul's kind of pictures of kind of employment and how it's recovering in some of the sectors like arts and tourism, and you can see it's getting better. And with retail, I mean, look at this. You take it back even further. We had such a meteoric rise for a couple of decades. It was kind of unstoppable, like kind of what I was saying about the first 10 years of us doing this Chains report. But then it wasn't just the pandemic, although it's fallen off a cliff in the pandemic. Really around 2015, retail started to decline a little bit, and I think that is e-commerce. That's really when people started to kind of accelerate the use of online shopping. I do want to say that it's not all negative. I've been very kind of negative so far, maybe, but we are seeing a lot of chains that are growing. A lot of the quote-unquote newer chains have come in the last decade or so and are really growing in the city. You can see some of everything from Pliables to Naya has been increasing. There's also been growth in the last year in a lot of other fast food, salad, package delivery, a lot of dessert type companies, ice cream stores. So there has been real growth in the market. It's interesting, it's not those kind of lunch places, or at least the sandwich places, but a lot of other food still is growing in the city. And I guess I wanted to end with this is that, while I think, we know how important retail is for our neighborhoods, for kind of the vibrancy of our communities. One of the reasons we've been doing this research, particularly around employment, is just that these jobs do matter. Retail is one of the most accessible industries in New York City. It employs 70% people of color. They are jobs that pay better wages than a lot of the fast-growing low-wage industries like home health care that is growing, whereas retail jobs are down by over 50,000 since the pandemic. Home health care jobs are up by 74,000, and that's good. We're an aging city, but those are the lowest wage jobs in the whole economy. So this does matter for those reasons. Anyway, thanks so much. If you want to check out the report, nycfuture.org. Thank you.
Good almost afternoon, everyone. My name's Andrew Ridgey. I am the Executive Director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. Thank you, Jessica and the team. I'm going to talk about some issues that, make me and Jessica often have to go commiserate, and we were forced not too long ago to go do a whiskey flight to talk about all the issues we were challenged with, and that was nice. But it's really good to be here, excellent to listen to all the other speakers. I think our elected leaders left, but it's nice to have those three in particular. People in government and often say small business is the backbone of New York City, the fabric of our community, but so often it's many of those same people that are then pushing the policies that make it more and more difficult for those exact types of businesses to survive in the city of New York. And I know the three members here earlier are really out there listening to our issues, and Raul, if he's still here, his data through the Comptroller's Office, particularly during the pandemic, was essential in the advocacy that we did for the restaurant and the nightlife community. We went from, about 325,000 jobs in the city's restaurants and bars pre-pandemic, and then by April 2020, so, about a month after the shutdown, we plummeted to about 90,000 jobs. Think about that. That's like the size of a city. And the industry is struggling to come back, but it is coming back. I think when we talk about different sectors, we speak about the streetscape of New York City. This is something that was happening before the pandemic. I think it's even been accelerated, where our restaurants, our food and beverage are really the fabric of the streetscape. Because yes, people can go to a retail shop to purchase something that they need. But when we go to our restaurants, our bars, this is where we come together to socialize. This is where business meetings happen. This is where life happens. I always say, the best and worst of society happens within the four walls of our restaurants and bars. And I think developers, landlords, folks just realize that if they want to try to reinvigorate their neighborhoods, their blocks, that food and beverage really needs to be a core essential and an anchor tenant to help drive that foot traffic and drive that not only economic activity, but social activity that allows places like New York City, that is a sociable city, to not only survive, but also to thrive. Now, I probably just used about 3 minutes talking about that, but I'm going to be on time because I got to get to Jackson Heights, but I would not miss this. And there's a bunch of issues that are so important to our industry that I talk with Jessica often about. The policy. What are our city and state lawmakers doing to either help or, in many cases, hurt our industry? So here's one thing. We talk about filling vacant storefronts. Outside of New York City, being the rest of New York State, you could get something called a temporary liquor license. You really wouldn't need a temporary liquor license. Unfortunately, the state liquor authority, for various reasons, is very backlogged. So right now, it's taking about 10 months to a year to get an actual liquor license, which if you're a small restaurant trying to open up, you're going to burn through all your opening capital to just get to that 1 year mark to get your liquor license. So they have temporary liquor licenses that helps you operating while it's going through the administrative process to get you that liquor license faster. Now the new chair, Lily Fan, at the State Liquor Authority is working hard to get through that backlog. Nonetheless, the backlog is a big, big backlog. So about 2 years ago, we got a law passed that allowed temporary liquor licenses to be issued in the city of New York. So you could go from almost a year waiting to several months. Unfortunately, to get it passed, there were a few provisions that were included that you had to meet to get a temporary liquor license. One of those was that the premises had to be licensed within the past 2 years. But here we are, 4 years about from when the pandemic shut our city down, which is crazy enough to think on its own, but you still have places that shut down at the beginning of the pandemic, and they had a liquor license, but now it's been more than 2 years, so they are not eligible for a liquor license. Fully built out restaurant or bar is sitting there, waiting for someone to open up, put people to work, and they can't get this liquor license. So we're working, there's bills right now in the state Senate and Assembly we're trying to get passed quickly that would get rid of that 2 year provision. Because it doesn't only impact those existing restaurants and bars that are shuttered, but there's like absurd examples. Like a Moynihan Train Hall. You know all those restaurants in there? Going back saying, restaurants, food service are the fabric of our larger development. New development. not eligible for a temporary liquor license. All the other new development, not eligible for it. So it's bad for the economy, bad for jobs, bad for our blocks, and bad for our city as a whole. And then the list goes on. Right now, we are waiting for the city to open up the portal for restaurants to apply for the new permanent outdoor dining program. Beginning of March, that portal is going to open. Look, people have a lot of strong opinions about a lot of different issues, but what I can say is the new program is going to standardize and make more sustainable, particularly the roadway dining. It'll be much more outdoor dining, outdoors, compared to what I call indoor dining, outdoor in the roadway that you see. That's like a fully enclosed structure. Sidewalk cafes will go back to essentially what they looked like before the pandemic. Tables, chairs, umbrellas, an awning, maybe a barrier and some planters. But overall, the new outdoor dining system is going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars less for local restaurants to participate than it cost to have a sidewalk cafe before the pandemic. Less red tape, less bureaucracy, and thousands and thousands of restaurants that were restricted by zoning before the pandemic from having outdoor dining will now be able to have it. So overall, it's such a better program. We'll be there to support restaurants throughout the process, and if there's tweaks that need to be made, that can always happen. Councilmember Keith Powers was here before. He made a comment about, I think, dancing in the zoning. You may know that some years ago we got the cabaret law repealed. This is an old, horrible law that was on the books that essentially restricted where people could dance. These are First Amendment rights. And over years, it had been used in racist ways and other types of ways to shut businesses down. Most of those aspects of the law had been shut down by the courts over the years. But the underlying zoning resolution, which many people did not know, was actually what controls where people can dance and where they cannot dance. So in this new City of Yes zoning reform, there is a proposal to get rid of these dancing restrictions and just do the common sense things. Make sure that a business where dancing happens has the proper means of egress, meets the Department of Buildings, the fire department requirements to keep everyone safe, the sound requirements and all of that. So that's something that's really important that is happening as well. Commercial rent tax was mentioned. There's another thing that's happening in the city council right now. Just tell me how long I have because I'll go on. But about trash. So the city wants to stop repeat litterers. They just leave trash out in front of their buildings over and over again. They had introduced a bill that would essentially increase the fines on repeat offenders. That's great. We should go after them. The city should fine them. They should stop it. I don't know. Somewhere along the line, the bill got changed. It got amended. Now the city council is looking to move it. And it would basically increase the first 1, 2, and 3 for first, second, and third violations, the penalty amount, and then decrease the penalty for violations in excess of 20 or more. So it seemed like it just did a 180 on it. And although the fines would go to the building owner, as many of you small business owners know that have commercial leases, often the fine for trash and stuff like that will get passed on through you. So we want to make sure that there's some modifications to the bill so small businesses are not unjustly fined for someone else's trash. We also want to make sure that for every violation that the city issues that doesn't pose an immediate hazard to the public or to workers, it allows for a warning or a cure period. An inspector should come out and say, hey, business owner, this is a violation. This is why it's a violation. This is how you correct the violation, and give them an opportunity to fix it. And then if they don't, sure, come back and issue a fine. But we need to change the mentality of a fine first, punitive enforcement structure to an educational, cooperative enforcement and compliance system between the city and our small businesses. And listen, Mayor Adams and his administration is doing a lot. SBS, everyone's doing a really great job, but it's our job, I always feel, to be there and keep poking and pushing because we can always do better. And that's what we need to do as a united business community. Two more things I'll just say. At the state level, there's a couple of issues labor-related, specifically in the restaurant industry to do with tip credits and tipping. It's pretty high profile. It's certainly very controversial, and there's lots of different perspectives. But, our restaurants are really, even the successful ones in so many ways, struggling to recover. We employed an enormous amount of people from all backgrounds, all walks of life, and I think we as a business community need to be very tied into these policies, because what sounds good doesn't always result in a good outcome, and we need our voices to be heard, especially among state lawmakers. There's also scary things like this sweat lien bill that would essentially allow a lien to be placed on the personal assets of business owners, their investors, and even certain managers that exert control based solely on the accusation of a wage violation. Not a finding from a judge, based on an accusation, eliminating your due process rights. Now, I understand the reasons, and we won't get into a whole debate about it right now. Sometimes there's really bad bosses out there. They don't pay their workers properly. Workers win a lawsuit. They try to go collect, and then the business owner will transfer their assets to someone else, and they'll never be able to collect. And that's an unfortunate situation. I don't know how often that's actually happening, but due process is a fundamental constitutional right. And there's similar related bills that could have dramatic impacts, like revoking a sales tax ID, a liquor license from businesses without due process. So again, there's well-intentioned, you understand the underlying purpose, but if you're a business owner, you really got to pay attention. And in these cases, an investor or a manager. And obviously this all plays in about who's going to invest in our storefronts and other types of businesses. Last thing I'll say as I run off this podium up here is this Sunday through Tuesday, my organization, the Hospitality Alliance, is the new association partner at the restaurant show over at the Jacob Javits Center. It's a 3-day trade show, vendors, products, services. Maybe some of you are already going. If you're in the industry, we can give you all free tickets. I can send Jessica the information. And we're also going to have 3 days of panels. Everything from the state of the restaurant industry with full service, state of nightlife, state of fast casual business, some of them like Jonathan was talking about, Naya, which is one of my favorites, and a lot of other really important topics that kind of dig in a little deeper to several of the topics that I just mentioned. So thank you very much for having me. Good seeing everyone. So sorry I have to run, but I see a video that I can listen to the rest of the folks later. Bye.
Good morning. My name is Hiro Mizumi. I'm a field research manager at CBRE, specializing in the city's retail markets. I'd like to thank the Chamber today for the opportunity to talk about some of the innovations and trends we've been noticing in the city. So to start off, to give context, these are the 16 main retail corridors we track at CBRE. These are the city's main economic retail drivers, as well as being some of the highest and most expensive spaces in the world. A majority of our studies is based on the trends and innovations we've noticed in these 16 corridors. So just to start off, we're talking about a snapshot of the market. I think over the past few years, we've noticed that the consumers have still been very strong and resilient in their spending. In response, retailers have been very active in the city's retail market, upticking in leasing, but the problem now is that the increased leasing in 21 and 22 have leased up a majority of the best and discounted spaces in the city, leading to some of the pricing on the remaining corridors to increase. So how have consumers been active? One of the things we've noticed a lot in our consumers is that there's something we call the barbell effect. From what we understand, it's when there's an introduction of technology, whether that's Amazon, clicks to bricks, or any sort of new innovative retailers, consumers are willing to spend sort of in two different ways. One is on the sort of discounted end. They're trying to find ways to spend less on essential day-to-day products, whether it's fast fashion or sort of discounted department stores like Target, or they're trying to spend more money to find luxury and leisure whenever it comes to things like diamonds or gifts. and consumers have been considerably active in the main retail corridors in these kind of spending habits. So how has that affected leasing? One of the things we've noticed since the early 2020s, since the pandemic, is that there's been a slowdown in leasing in 2020. Activity almost came to a stop, but once around 2021, the restrictions and limitations have been lifted. We saw a significant rebound in activity. Through 2022, we saw retailers trying to take up all those spaces that were now on the market, with landlords offering really generous concession packages to encourage retailers to fill those vacancies immediately, scoop up those best available spaces. And now that we're going into 2023, we're starting to notice that with those spaces gone, now only the most expensive ones remain, and retailers are taking a moment to take a step back to see if any better opportunities come to the market. So what kind of retailers have been active? What we've noticed is that New York City is still, regardless of what people say, a very big deal for retailers. We're seeing a lot of brands, everything from luxury, whether it's LVMH, to grocers like Lidl or Wegmans, to new sporting clubs and gyms such as Vital Climbing Gym. The two major active industries in the city have always been apparel and F&B. Apparel, everything from fast fashion to haute couture brands, to F&B tenants from everything from quick service restaurants to tablecloth eateries. So why are these industries active? We noticed that from looking at the charts that roughly 50% or more of the annual leasing in 2023 was done by F&B and apparel. The one thing that a lot of people wouldn't be surprised by is New York City is home to more sort of headquarters for apparel and fashion designers than any other city in the world. Along with that, New York City is still the global hub for culinary capital, which is the home of some of the best eateries in the world. So which markets are in demand? What we've noticed is for the high street markets, Soho, Plaza District, and Madison Avenue are more active than ever, which remain a big tourist and weekend destination for young, fashionable crowds. Young people still are very attracted to luxury designers and international boutiques, and they need places to hang out. So those are the popular destinations for all clicks of bricks and traditional stores looking to open their first location in the city. And something worthy of note is I think a lot of with the retail activity that's happening in the city, we've noticed that from 2020 to 2023, that roughly 15% of all leases signed in the city are signed by tenants that are new to this market. And in 2023, that number hiked to 17%, so we know that momentum from new retailers trying to look for new locations in the city have not waned. And so how has that affected our corridors? We've noticed that on the 16 corridors, that availability is down to levels not seen roughly since 2017, following the 2020 surge. But with that being said, I think a lot of the best spaces with the discounted offers are now being leased, and a lot of retailers are taking a moment to step back before signing new locations. In addition to the lack of availability, we're starting to sort of see a rise in pricing. After the rents have significantly declined since the pandemic, we're starting to sort of see landlords price the remaining spaces that are on the market at a slightly higher rate to entice sort of better deals. But that's also considerably slowing deals down in the city. So what are retailers expecting? I think with retailers signing new deals in the city are expecting ways to, one, focus on omnichannel habits. So if they want to open a store in the city, they're not necessarily just looking for another store to sell goods. They're looking for opportunities to how do they make their website work better with the store, or how can we sign temporarily to sort of market a specific product. In addition to that, retailers are looking for larger concession packages with deals taking longer to sign and costing more to build. They're trying to find ways to maximize the amount of TI and sort of free rent periods that they have so that they're essentially they can do well once they get the doors open. And the last thing we're seeing is retailers trying to find ways to sort of increase their partnership with the landlords. In the past, like everybody was signing 10 to 15-year deals. Now retailers are trying to find ways to sign flexible pop-ups or short-term deals with multiple options to renew or terminate their leases if they need to, as ways to pay for rent. In the past, no landlord in New York City was ever going to agree to a percentage rent deal, but now, they want to sort of try to find ways to incorporate entrepreneurship and cooperation between the tenants and the landlords for their businesses. So how has that affected the outlook? I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind over the next few years is that, one, there's a limited commodity supply of spaces. There's not enough sort of new, exciting retail spaces that retailers are looking at in the city, so we have to find ways to sort of either build new spaces or to encourage retailers to look at secondary markets. Another thing that we have to think about is the cautious demand. There's still a lot of demand for retailers looking for space, but things like economic uncertainty and the amount of time it takes to build space or the capital expenditures required are the major turnoffs for retailers looking for new locations. So we have to find ways to sort of address and sort of accommodate for new retailers looking for homes. And the last thing we have to think about is the demographics and locations. Like we found on these 16 corridors, retailers are willing to pay above average rents for major locations if they can find the right sort of home and the right demographic that it can appeal to. So hope in the next few years we can work hard to make sure we can give these new retailers a home. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Susan from the National Retail Federation. And just in case you're not sure with what the National Retail Federation is, we are the world's largest trade organization, obviously, representing retail. Our members are everyone from department stores to independent retailers, restaurants, grocery, mass merchants. We have been around for more than 100 years. Based out of Washington, D.C., our main goal is to advocate for whatever retail issues and policies need a voice on Capitol Hill. And so that's the lion's share of our business is advocacy, but we also spend a lot of time educating and producing content, and that's kind of where I come in. You may recall hearing NRF and the National Retail Federation last month because we host our largest conference every year here in New York in January. It's at the Jacob Javits Center, and it's about 3 or 4 days of nonstop sessions and technology and so on. So we had 40,000 of your friends and relatives all at the Jacob Javits Center for 3 days for the big show. So that is how we're best known. But anyway, today I get to talk to you about some of the current trends in retail and sort of the future of the store, and I get to be the person who stands up here and says there's lots of great bells and whistles out there, so go out there and shop and see how great it is. It should come as no surprise to anyone that the National Retail Federation is very bullish on retail, particularly physical retail, which despite the growth of digital, it still accounts for 75% of sales. So understanding the role of digital is key, but physical stores remain crucial to the customer experience because stores, as you know, are where shoppers connect. They're vital to our communities. They're an extension of the store brand. Brick and mortar stores provide new opportunities, and they provide opportunities for us to experiment. They're a place to experiment. So, yes, looking externally, there are plenty of economic and macro headwinds, including inflation, including global political conflicts. We've got a changed consumer and a changing consumer, and we've got some uncharted and fast emerging technologies to deal with. All of these factors are converging, and they're requiring that retailers adapt their businesses. And trust me, they are adapting. The challenge and the opportunity for retailers is to strengthen their digital capabilities while harnessing the physical model that they've built over the centuries. And I'm going to share with you today 3 stores that opened last year in Manhattan and that I think kind of bring together that theme of digital and physical. So behind me is Petco. It's the new flagship store that they opened in Manhattan's Union Square area. It opened last June. The Petco Health and Wellness Company, which is how they are best known, although we all call them Petco, combines the best of the company's physical and digital offerings for what they consider to be a complete pet care experience. So this is a 2-level store. It has 25,000 square feet, and it houses a full suite of experiences. So there's products and services, of course. There's a full service veterinary hospital. and there's even Ruff's Barker Shop for pet grooming. So I'm not really following along, but go ahead and flip. This is the fresh foods, and this is part of the veterinary where they also have some foods. The full-service veterinary provides services that range from wellness exams and vaccinations to microchipping. There's this in-store gourmet kitchen, and that's small batch human-grade pet meals. There's a shop for personalized items for pets and pet parents, and there's even a wash and dry station for those who kind of want to get the hands-on experience of grooming. So I think that's the next shot. There we go. Get in there, get wet with the pet. And finally, there's the last set of slides shows this is, some of you may be familiar with Ready, which is another Petco spinoff, but also pet goods and all personalized items for pets and parents. And the same is over here. It's called 17th and Bark. That's the area where they're based. So part of the beauty of this is that it kind of thoughtfully brings together adjacent businesses that drive value and convenience for the shopper. Every element is designed to cultivate a seamless experience that nurtures the bond between pets and pet parents. And we think it makes it a top destination for pet parents to experience that whole idea of pet health and wellness. So the next store that kind of brings together physical, digital, and the energy of where our store design is headed is Wegmans Supermarket. Wegmans opened on Astor Place in mid-October. It's an 87,500 square foot store. It fills the space that was once occupied by Kmart, which has now gone the way of so many. This is the first Wegmans that actually doesn't have a parking lot, but it more than makes up for that with an elevated shopping experience. It's actually reminiscent of Harrods of London's Fresh Market Hall, and I believe that is actually where they drew inspiration from as they built the store. So I don't know if you've had a chance to visit it. It's pretty spectacular. The main floor at street level is mostly a food hall. So there's sushi and salads and sandwiches, you name it, soup, pizza, wings. There's hot Asian cuisine, and there's made-to-order and packaged Mediterranean kind of options. So this is the first floor. Lots of to-go, serving the community that lives in that area and has small kitchens and not a lot of room for storage, and so it's quick in and out. And the next one is, we are now on the lower level. So let me tell you a little bit about the lower level. It's stocked with everything you could hope for and hope for to find in a supermarket. So, snacks to cereal, soda to paper goods, quinoa to kombucha. And there's huge selections of everything, which is actually not common here in grocery stores in Manhattan. So it's a nice aha, look what I can find. There is a huge butcher section, an expansive selection of cheeses, and a somewhat pretentiously named sakanaya, which is Japanese for a fish counter, and that features a very diverse selection of fish. The produce department, also on the lower level, is massive, so much so it accounts for about 17% of the entire store. So again, here we've got bakery. This is the sushi area. Let's flip, and what else have we? Obviously preparing fresh foods, but this is an idea of a Japanese fish counter. There's lots of fish that arrive whole, which is very unusual for New York. And then they butcher in front of you. So it's pretty wild to be a part of it. And then I think there's one more. Yeah, gives you a sense for how big the produce area is. There's not much that you are left wondering, can I find? And here's the cheese department. So a great store and a good opportunity. Opening soon is going to be a 94-seat seafood restaurant with a champagne and oyster bar and a sushi counter. And more good news, just last week we heard that Wegmans is eyeing a second store in Manhattan. So that's new opportunities. And that brings me to the final store that I'm going to call out today, which is the new Crate and Barrel flagship store in Flatiron, which really, for me, epitomizes the blending of physical and digital. So this is a 23,000 square foot, 2-level store. It allows customers to shop the brand's classic whole home merchandise offering, but it's surrounded by personal experiences. So the store offers free trade and design services, and those services will reach beyond the store walls. There's twice as many experts in this store than there are in any other Crate and Barrel, and there's more than 50 feet of tangible design inspiration. So I'm not sure how much you can see from the images, but there are literally walls of fabric swatches. So you got walls of fabric swatches. Hardware, walls of hardware, fixtures, wood samples, and then there's something called the white wall, which is just all the white dinnerware and serveware that Crate and Barrel offers. It's just a gorgeous store that really respectfully designed inside of a space that was the very first department store in New York way back in the previous century. There's a monogramming service, an expansive botanical shop with dried botanicals and silk botanicals, and somebody will help you design your floral arrangement. There's a gift registry, and there's the largest collection of Crate and Kids branded merchandise in any Crate and Barrel store. But what really sets this store apart from any other is that it invites an online shopper shopping from anywhere in the world to access the New York flagship 24/7. And it's by means of an immersive virtual store experience that's powered by technology from a company called Obsess. So if you were to today, Google virtual store, Crate and Barrel, Flatiron, eventually you're going to get to Obsess technology. Once you enter, you're actually in the store, and you're navigating, and you can click, and you can put it in the cart, and you can shop, and you can ask questions of a designer. It is like nothing you have ever experienced before. And Obsess technology has been around for a little bit. It's been tried out by a few different companies. This is the first really big footprint for them. So you can get to like 450 products digitally. It's very different than shopping Crate and Barrel online, which if you're an aficionado, you do that. But this is an opportunity to actually be in that flagship and to navigate it. So I think you'll be amazed by it, but I also think that we're set for a lot of amazement in the future, that the future of physical is very bright as long as retailers pay attention to how to infuse it with digital and experiential ideas that the consumer gravitates toward.
Thanks, Susan, and I'm a big fan of the Wegmans. I'm BJ Jones. I'm the executive director of the New York in the mayor's office. Thank you, Jessica and Nadia and the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce for this invaluable discussion. I'm going to step back and talk about the New York action plan, but wanted to recognize that there's a lot of synergy in this room, and so I really hope we can capitalize on this. And so that's great. And even better, because of all of that synergy, I can make my presentation even shorter because there's a lot of common themes. Yes, it's a new recommendation in the new New York plan. Okay, I will. Here we go. Okay, great. Okay, let's roll. So, for context, the mayor and governor convened a group of civic leaders and industry experts in 2022 under the incredible stewardship of Dan Doctoroff and Rich Bury to come up with an action plan for an equitable economic recovery for the city. And among those leaders was indeed Jessica, which is why I think there is so much synergy here. And the panel's work led to the conclusion that, we not only need to make New York City the best place to work, we need to make it the best place, period. And so I'm going to discuss some of that progress that's underway, aligning with a lot of the themes and initiatives we've already heard. Again, in the interest of time, if you want to learn more, please find me afterwards and let's connect. But also check out new@newyorkpanel.com, which also covers these initiatives, the progress we've made, and updates as we keep going. And so, this recovery, which informs what we're talking about here with Storefronts too, encompasses a wide range of initiatives. There's a 40-point action plan across 3 key goals: reimagining New York's business districts as 24/7 vibrant destinations, making it easier for New Yorkers to get to work, and generating future-focused growth. And it's important to recognize that, as I talk about the initiatives, that it's the outcomes that are most important. And though there's more work to do, we are encouraged that we've regained the jobs lost during the pandemic ahead of schedule. So let's talk about some of the different facets of this plan, and investing in beautiful public space is one of them. There's multiple objectives that are served by these initiatives that you see here, whether it's the Broadway Vision Plan, redesigning Fifth Avenue, vibrant public space at Broadway Junction, investing in Fulton Street and across downtown Brooklyn, and more. It's an economic engine, but it also provides public health and community building benefits as well. Let's talk trash a little bit, because that's also a quality of life issue that impacts what we're talking about. New Yorkers leave out 44 million pounds of waste every day on the curb. That's more than 100 full 747 airplanes worth of garbage. And so we're committed to containerizing it, and I think many of you, if not all of you, have heard a lot about that work underway, including Friday's upcoming requirement for all businesses to use containers, and later in 2024 expanding that to residential buildings, and we're going to continue to build on that. As you've heard, we're launching the nation's largest permanent outdoor dining program. Legislation was signed by the mayor last year. Final rules were just published in January, and the online application portal will be up in just a few weeks, and you can learn more about that online too. In July, the city had unveiled the Get Sheds Down report, a sweeping overhaul of rules governing sidewalk construction, sheds, and scaffolding that will remove these eyesores from city streets. We are pushing forward on an effort to reimagine shed designs and strengthen our enforcement, so I was excited to hear the council member echo that today. We even have removed over 2,000 sheds since July, including the longest standing shed on Edgecombe Avenue in Harlem that was over 21 years old enough to drink. We're also looking at our streetscape differently because we have to meet our in-demand lifestyle. Since the 1950s, our curb space has predominantly catered to private vehicular parking. However, the demands have evolved dramatically since then. Improved management of the curb can improve safety, mobility, access, and the flow of people and goods while moving the city closer to achieving sustainability goals as well. And we kicked off public outreach for our Smart Curbs pilot just at the beginning of the the year and are soliciting feedback now, and you can learn more about our relatively new curb management action plan online as well. Another important strategy for us is to create new reasons for people to go to business districts. New York City's Open Streets program transforms streets into public space open to all. There's been more than 160 locations spanning over 300 blocks in all 5 boroughs for the very first time. And also through our public art and community activations program at DOT, we've had 30 temporary public art pieces installed in the past year and over 300 programs in 2023. This really is the express version. We are all in agreement that we need to do more on housing, and that also contributes to the vibrancy of neighborhoods and business districts. And we have been making progress on housing despite the challenges, but so much more needs to be done, which is why we're all talking about this in Albany as we speak with the vital support of the governor, and have been working in neighborhoods across the city to rezone and create affordable housing, whether it's Atlantic Avenue or in the Bronx, Jamaica, Queens, Long Island City, and more. We also must create more flexible mixed-use districts, and so 3 ways that the city is endeavoring to advance these efforts are through office conversions, the MCOR program, and the City of Yes. And just to touch on the first 2 briefly, the office conversions accelerator is comprised of experts from across the city government and works with office building owners to make it easier to pursue conversion opportunities. And the Manhattan Commercial Revitalization Program, affectionately known as MCOR, is a project run by EDC that leverages tools of the New York City Industrial Development Agency to provide financial incentives, assistance in the form of tax incentives to support transformative renovations of aging commercial office buildings located in Manhattan south of 59th Street. The first 2 recipients were just announced and will create workspaces that can attract businesses and top talent, make necessary upgrades and retrofits to ensure compliance with Local Law 97, and introduce dynamic ground floor retail. Additionally, both projects have committed to including a full floor incubator or accelerator targeted towards high growth industries. And I'll slow down for just a couple of minutes because I would like to talk about the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, which has gotten some important attention today because it can really help transform our business landscape. The City of Yes for Economic Opportunity is one of 3 citywide initiatives to modernize and update our city's zoning regulations to support small businesses, create affordable housing, and promote sustainability, part of Mayor Adams' overall vision for a more inclusive, equitable City of Yes. And I should note that the first of those, the City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality, passed the City Council at the end of last year. City of Yes for Housing Opportunity is coming down the pike. More on that soon. I'm focusing on the business flexibility initiative around the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity. Knowing that our zoning for businesses have been sorely in need of a refresh, the Department of City Planning has been on a listening tour for much of the last year and a half, asking ways that zoning might be getting in the ways of establishing or expanding businesses. Because in many cases, the way that zoning regulates businesses hasn't been updated in more than 60 years. There are outdated and sometimes counterproductive regulations on business activity, like preventing a bar from advertising the time a band might perform or setting a strict square footage cap on how much space a bakery can devote to baking. New York City can be a challenging place to run a business, and dealing with government regulation is often frustrating to say the least, and slow, confusing, sometimes illogical. And often all this red tape makes investing in businesses really hard. And that in turn contributes to our city being less vibrant and having fewer people able to start that business, having one more vacant storefront, having one more business have to leave the neighborhood or the city overall to expand. You can see a couple of examples here. Our rules governing businesses, again, most of which are over 60 years old, are indeed holding our businesses back, either by restricting them outright from locating or regulating how they do business with some sort of old or complicated rule that's just not being clear in ways that cost businesses time and money. Our overarching vision for this initiative is to make sure that our zoning works for our economy and not against it. And as a result of this work, to have a zoning resolution that's simple, more adaptable, and more modern. So how are we going to achieve this? The City of Yes for Economic Opportunity has 4 main goals to that end, and I'll go over them a little bit now. Goal 1, we want to make it easier for businesses to find space by lifting zoning barriers so that businesses can locate closer to their customers. And in most cases, our zoning rules governing businesses have not been updated again since the 1960s. It's a really important point because it's long past due to make some changes. Our first 6 proposals under this goal do exactly that, making our zoning more simple, more adaptable, and more modern so businesses can more easily locate and grow. On to our second goal. We want to support growing industries by reducing obstacles in zoning for emerging business types. Each of the industries highlighted in the second goal, like urban agriculture, life sciences, nightlife, amusements, and home-based businesses, face ambiguity or outdated restrictions in our zoning, and we want to address those obstacles so we can help emerging business types thrive across our city and create jobs across all 5 boroughs. Our third goal is to foster vibrant neighborhoods by ensuring businesses contribute to active, safe, and walkable streets. Economic vibrancy isn't just about what occurs inside a building, but also how business interacts with its surroundings. Inconsistency in existing streetscape regulations, or in some cases, a total absence of zoning, means there's no way to curb some of the worst outcomes of a business activity spilling out into the public right-of-way or creating conditions that are unpleasant or even unsafe for passing pedestrians and cyclists. And so our 3 proposals in this area are designed to ensure that businesses contribute to active, safe, and walkable streets. And then our fourth and final goal is to create new opportunities for businesses to open by establishing new zoning tools that can boost job growth and business expansion. Our zoning resolution contains many kinds of tools which can be used to initiate a discretionary process to change an area's underlying regulations, including special permits from the Board of Standards and Appeals, City Planning Commission authorizations, and special permits in zoning districts. As we're seeking to modernize our city's zoning to support businesses, business location and growth, we also need to update our zoning toolkit so that businesses can have better access to pathways that can enable their expansion and adaptation. Our last 4 proposals all create new kinds of discretionary zoning tools for the future economic success of our city. And so here's a roadmap of the process, and it's exciting. We're nearing the final stages. The city planning team, as I mentioned, has spent more than a year getting in front of as many audiences as possible, presenting our ideas for these solutions that businesses are facing. We just wrapped up the community board review, going to all of the community boards, attending nearly 200 public meetings across the city, and the City Planning Commission is now expected to vote next week on Wednesday, March 6th. So the City Council's formal stage in the public review will begin shortly after that commission vote. And so we anticipate a City Council hearing in late March or early April. And so this is where, if you are, support, these initiatives and the business flexibility that these bring, we encourage your participation and to testify at this City Council hearing. And I'd like to end by just bringing this back to the subject of the day, activating storefronts. And there are many strategies at work that we've all been talking about that will facilitate this goal. And I just want to reiterate that it's top of mind for us at the city too. As you can see here from the New York Action Plan, it's really important. Activating storefronts is initiative number 14 out of the 40 in the action plan, and even noted by our mayors. So again, I'm really glad we're here together, and I'm looking forward to strengthening our collective efforts to make this happen. So our work is far from done, but let's tap into this synergy, and I look forward to continuing the conversation and work with all of you. Thank you.
It's usually around this time where people ask you to stand up and walk you through a breathing exercise to prepare you for the rest of the day, but I won't subject that to you. But instead, just really thank you for continuing to stick around and hear from us. We're really jazzed about this work and excited to share it with you all. So good morning. My name is Priscilla Kwok, and I'm the Managing Director for Strategic Initiatives at the New York City Department of Small Business Services. Thank you again to Jessica and the Manhattan Chamber for inviting us to kind of stand amongst our peers and share the stage with so many others committed to seeing corridors thrive across the boroughs. As the city's designated economic and workforce development agency, SBS serves two major groups that drive economic growth: New Yorkers via pathways to good jobs, and small businesses via access to tools and resources across their life cycle. Many of my peers today have shared insights on what it's looking like on the ground, and much of it is laddering up to witnessing real economic growth across the city. 1 in 6 businesses open today began during this administration, and we actually set a record high of 4.7 million total jobs, over 1 million of which were actually contributed by small businesses. This much is clear. They will lead our recovery forward, but we need to do our part, as BJ mentioned, to ensure that New York City remains a city of yes for small businesses. So given our agency's purview, it was essential to center our work around storefront activations and more broadly corridor vibrancy on New Yorkers and small businesses. And so we started by parsing out neighborhood level data. And here's what it showed us. Vacancy rates remain high. Storefront trends were impacted by the swift move to e-commerce during the pandemic, and the highest rates of change were across Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. But this also shows us how the city is adapting to economic shifts. E-commerce is now one of the fastest growing retail subsectors in New York City, and the city is now home to 300 plus startups in that subsector. What excites us is this tidal shift in how New Yorkers are moving through their neighborhoods. Increased ridership is enabling retail growth. Commercial real estate is on the rise, and as evidenced by the recent New York City Small Business Opportunity Fund, stewarded by SBS, a large number of small business startups are deploying funding towards opening new storefronts across the boroughs. And so we identify 3 key goals for SBS to fulfill and help make New York City the best place to live, work, and play. The first is to increase the number of storefront activations, but pair it with a suite of services that empower small business owners to grow more resilient over time. The second is our major call to action for you all today, that is to partner with us and co-invest in these solutions alongside SBS. And third, to ensure that the city's large capital investments always include a vision for corridor vibrancy and resiliency. So we started building our approach by looking at that data. We then had to take inventory of the various solutions SBS had already deployed across these corridors to help identify the deltas for additional resources that we needed to build together with you all. These solutions range from grants to outreach to signature products that allow businesses to, in part, do their own wayfinding, to connections with tools outside of our agency. We landed on a set of near, medium, and longer-term initiatives. for SBS, most of which were informed by these best practices from sister cities and innovative solutions from across other sectors, but really focused on specific ways for our agency to help pilot and build scalable models in partnership with you all. I'll talk through some of these at a high level, but hope you guys find us, my team, afterwards, and email me even afterwards to discuss further. So from the top, we need to ensure that small businesses, bids, and merchant organizations have access to reliable and timely information. While SBS serves small businesses across the lifecycle, it can be challenging for owners to navigate government and identify the markers for success along the way. As for bids and merchant organizations, we know that there is no one solution fits all. The intent is to kind of share best practices for activating corridors, as well as up-to-date information on the latest policies and regulations that may impact each and every neighborhood, so that they can disseminate that information across their communities. And both of these resources, we hope, will be living virtual guides. We also want to help prime entrepreneurs who have demonstrated success elsewhere, whether that be e-commerce or otherwise, to set them up and prime them for their next phase of success into storefronts. We intend to work together with community organizations, PMOs, landlords, and others to place entrepreneurs in prime retail space for a pilot period, after which they would then be empowered and enabled to take on a longer-term lease. But we also know that short-term placements alone won't go a long way. We need to train our entrepreneurs on how to optimize space and build retail presence, and we're hoping to build that into the program. We also want to help small businesses envision themselves in these corridors and drive New Yorkers and visitors to them. We hope to develop an artist in residence program, much in partnership with folks like BJ, to beautify storefronts as well as activate out-of-home assets to help drive traffic to these critical corridors. Our team is also focused on, Our team is also focused on ensuring that small businesses know exactly which spaces are available for short and long-term leases. We seek to develop a storefront matchmaking platform to not only showcase retail spaces across those key corridors sourced by many of you in the room, but also layer on city-affiliated data that shows an owner which neighborhood has the highest valuability for growth in their sector. For example, if I was a jewelry owner with 2 employees looking for 800 square foot of space in Midtown Manhattan, jewelry district may not be my best fit, right? There are opportunities and heat maps that we are currently looking at to kind of incentivize growth outside of those already kind of robust corridors, sector-specific corridors. Our partners in the private sector have also demonstrated interest in piloting and providing opportunities for small businesses to think about ways to drive efficiencies and business growth through different tech solutions. And so we also hope to grow local test beds where we activate assets with the latest technology with small business owners as those pilot users. But we also know that programs won't be enough to sustain this work. We need to constantly work on policy and advocacy. And so as one of the city stewards of the various incentives programs that are available to small businesses, we are looking for ways to expand eligibility criteria to enable more of them to land in certain neighborhoods. So I'll land with one ask. Please join us across all of these efforts, whether it be partnership, thought partnership, co-investment, identification of available space, or otherwise. This work won't be successful without all of you in the room. So please get in touch with us. Thank you so much.
Good morning or good almost afternoon. It's an honor to share the stage today with so many folks who are committed to supporting small businesses. You are my people, for real. I'm Meredith Phillips Almeida. It's also an honor here to be here today to represent the New York City Small Business Resource Network, or SBRN. So I'm going to fly through this as a favor to all of us. So what is the SBRN? The SBRN is a comprehensive approach to small business resiliency that offers free, personalized guidance and support to help businesses grow and thrive. It's important for me to point out that SBRN is a program. It's not an organization. It's a program that exists at the collaboration of the 5 borough chambers of commerce. So shout out to Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten Island chambers and their presidents for having the foresight to quickly stand up a business recovery effort early in the pandemic with the support from the Partnership for New York City, the Peterson Foundation, and agencies like EDC and SBS. This model is still relevant today, of course, because I don't have to tell all of you that you don't need a pandemic for small businesses to need support. It's sort of the everyday. So how does it work? It's quite simple, the model, I think. We have a team, a field team of business support specialists today that's about 15 strong. In the early pandemic days, it was about 40 strong, who are hitting these streets, meeting businesses where they are, talking to them, building relationships, and connecting them to the specific free resources and programs from both the public and the private sector that meet their specific needs. So I think, what I want to talk about today in the context of storefronts, we've had lots of good news about, more jobs, stores opening. There is a little bit of special sauce in this model that I think, can really help with resiliency. I want to sort of focus on that word resiliency, and that's partnership, resources, and relationships. So in terms of partnerships, this team of ours, represented here alongside many of the small businesses we support, is on the ground partnering with organizations like BIDS or organizations that have relationships really close to the ground to sort of reach those businesses that are traditionally disconnected from information streams and sometimes don't know about all the great resources that are out there that can help them. Resources, I think something else that's unique to us or special to us is we're able to build relationships with resources from both the public and the private sector, which means we are absolutely out there amplifying all the amazing city programs that exist from, SBS or emergency management and making sure businesses are connected to those. But we're also able to work with DoorDash to get folks into their programs and things like that. I always say that the landscape of resources to support small businesses is incredibly complex and ever-changing, and it is impossible to imagine any small business understanding everything that's out there and what is best for them. So really what this team's job is to know what's out there, right? And be able to talk to you about what might be the best fit for you so that you don't have to do that work. And then relationships, I think because we have a field team and they're assigned to corridors and geographies, they're visiting businesses over and over, they're building relationships, they're building trust. You really need trust if you want a small business owner to open up to you and say, hey, this is really what's going on with me and this is what I need help with. Another thing I also say about this work all the time, if you ever heard me speak, I say this all the time, I think the key to resiliency for a small business is knowing where to find help before you are in crisis. Before you are in crisis. When your refrigerator breaks down, that's not the time you want to start Googling something, right? You want to know that you can call Dairy at the Bronx Chamber, or sort of Vincent here in Manhattan. You want to already have a relationship with someone that you know can help you, and I think that's been really important to this work and to our program time and time again. The businesses who talk about the work often name the person who has helped them. And we've had impact. So you can see here in this map, we have worked with, which means we call them full program participants, provided services to over 13,000 businesses since we launched in October of 2020. You see the reach here across the city. 61% of those businesses have been in LMI zip codes, which are shaded dark here on the map. 76% of those businesses are MWBE as self-identified, not all certified, but if you want to get certified, we can help you with that too. And we've touched many tens of thousands of businesses because, as you know, with relationship building, it doesn't just happen once. You don't just visit someone and they say, oh yeah, I want to tell you about my rent issues. We have to go in time and time again and sort of tell lots of businesses about the fact that we're here and we're here to help. So I have one call to action about a specific program that we have. This is a great example of our ability to sort of leverage partnership with public and private sector. It's called Open and Online. We started it early in the pandemic when we realized that many businesses did not have an online presence that allowed their customers to connect with them, especially when we were still in shutdown mode. Since We launched in 2021. We've completed almost 1,000 digital projects. So that's like building websites, building e-commerce websites, developing branding packages, or doing SEO consultations. I'm happy to announce that with an investment from Wells Fargo recently, we will be able to do another 500 projects this year, focusing specifically, well, not only, but specifically we want to target storefront businesses and MWBEs. So if you know any business that does not have a digital presence or would like to sort of improve their traffic through SEO consult or could use a logo because they're starting up, please absolutely refer them to us. And you can do that by going to our website here, which is super long, NYC Small Business Resource Network.org, where you can find the intake form and the application right on the front page. And of course, feel free to email me or we can connect if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, it's quite an honor to be in a room with so many people who care about New York, because New York is amazing. My name is Anita. I am the Chishama Mama. Let's see. I don't know if I can make this work. I'm trying. Nope. I'm really bad at technology. Huh? All right. Well, there we go. That one. Okay, here we go. So this is what Chishama does. We take empty space and we transform it. We want to activate the city. And this year we have $13 million worth of space that we give to artists, small businesses, and free art classes. Today I'll be going to the Bronx to visit our art class where we are having a cooking class with kids. Small businesses, the Oculus, Port Authority, Grand Central, up in Harlem, 220 Front Street. Yep. Space to present. We do a lot of shows, dance, theater, music, visual art. And we have space to create workspace for artists, really important. Okay, look, these are all our locations. We just got $500,000 to go to upstate New York. We were able to do that in 6 months. We're working with Seneca Nation in Salamanca, where they have a small business. There's a store that opened down the street, and instead of just being a weed store, a lot of upstate needs a lot of help. Not just New York City, but New York City is where my heart is. I'm done. Thank you.
Hi. I don't even know why I'm here. I only got to New York 4 years ago. Oh, I'm a teacher, so I'm not used to a mic. I just yell. So I was a teacher for 30 years, and then I came to New York, and just pre-pandemic. Yeah. And pre-pandemic, there were too many empty stores. I was shocked. When the pandemic happened, all of Columbus Avenue where I lived just kind of shut down. And with my students, we came up with this idea that we were going to put art and create an art gallery. And so never intending for it to actually become a reality, it was just a project. We went ahead through the whole engineering design process. We generated the ideas. We decided who we were going to annoy all around the city. And by some fluke of nature, it actually happened. So we are Art on the Ave, NYC, Ave, because it started on Columbus Avenue. We were trying to rebrand that. And what we do is very much like what Anita does, except I didn't know Anita, and I didn't know she was doing that because I did not know a single person in New York City. I am in this room now, and I see so many faces that I have met because of this project, from people from Downtown Alliance, all the different bids around the city that we've worked with. I'm just honored to be among you all. Sorry, so what we do is put art in vacant storefronts. We activate entire neighborhoods, though. We don't go location to location. We decide and determine an area where there is a significant problem, and we go after as many of those properties as we can to create a gallery walk, and an experience for people to enjoy art from the street. So actually, it is not only about decorating the streetscape. We actually activate the streetscape and the exhibitions for 3 entire months. And we do that by forming partnerships with community organizations. We bring people to the art from different neighborhoods. We engage with schools. We do all kinds of different events around, including musicians, including neighboring small businesses around the art exhibitions that we put on. So just to give you, sorry, but back to this one, this is a location at 28 Liberty Street. So that is downtown. It is it's the result of an exhibition that we did downtown. Stores find us, property owners find us, and increasingly they are asking us to not just activate the windows, but to put artists inside the space. So that's one of the spaces that we have down there. I'm not going to go over all the challenges, that's why we're all here. Is this a solution? Hopefully it's not the forever solution, but it's working for now. What is the value? I will show you what the value is, the value that we've seen. I don't have a lot of numbers. I don't collect data the way I probably should. I collect it by actually walking to every single neighborhood to check every single store that we have activated, and I do it every 3 months to see, is the business now operational? Is there something there? Has it rented? Is it still there 6 months later or a year later? And this is what we found. So at the neighborhood level, we have acted, can I hold this? I'm so not used to standing in one space. Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel much better. So we've activated 83 spaces to date. It's actually 84 because we have a new one up in Inwood. Of those spaces, 70% are now rented 12 months or rent within 12 months. Is that because we put art in the windows? Most probably not. But did it hurt? Absolutely, it didn't hurt, and most of the property owners all of the property owners that we have worked with have been exceptionally happy, to the point that they don't want the art to be removed at the end of the 3 months. So first they make it impossible for us to get the space, but once they relent and they cave and they give it to us, they then don't want us to remove the art that's there. That's when we go in and we say, well, can we have the space then? Let us do something further with it. Let us turn it into a studio workshop so people can actually envision it. Essentially, we are staging stores where the community comes in, and the value for the community is in all of the events that we host. I'm a teacher, that is very dear to my heart, so anything that we do involves anything from K to 12 students. So we have had universities come out and want to see people who are studying urban design, but we have at this point done all of those things and far more. I don't have time often to update my presentations, but the numbers are higher than that. We constantly bring kids. We have a location in the Oculus. We have 2 at 28 Liberty Street. We just held a workshop there yesterday. We have an entire subway station full of art at Fulton Center, where we also host workshops. We have some on the Upper East Side, and right now we have this new one that I'm super excited about in Inwood, where we have created a multi-use space so that it can function as a space to exhibit, and it can also it's an artist residency program, but it can also transform into a workshop space for the community. So these are all of the things we've done. I do have my QR code numbers, actually. And if 10,500 people have scanned the QR code, we've also stood there and counted how many people out of the ones who stopped to look at art actually scan, and the numbers are like 4 times more than that. So we're pretty happy with it. For the artists, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I am not an artist. I was never in that world, to be honest with you. I can tell you I love every single one of the artists that I've worked with, but I am not about the art. I am about the streetscape, I am about the community, and the artists are my vehicle. I tell them that, they don't find it insulting, because at the end of the day, we have had, in 4 years, 11 exhibitions, and that does not include the rotating 4 exhibitions at the subway station every year. We have worked with over 200 artists. We have helped them sell, as of today, over $350,000 worth of work, which is substantial considering that we cap in a lot of our neighborhoods at pieces that are $3,000. A lot, in fact, most of the art that we sell to local collectors who didn't know they were collectors. They walked by day after day on the school run. They walked on the way to the coffee shop. They fell in love with a piece, and that's when they make that purchase. So we're very excited, and the artists are really happy to be involved with us. The other thing we know it works, at least from that point of view. It also travels. So it started on the Upper West Side when, you know what, it was 2020. It was fall of 2020. Anything would have worked, right? So we had to test it after that. We did go to all these other neighborhoods. We were in West Village. We've been in Lower Manhattan. We've done 2 exhibitions with the Alliance for Downtown. But the presence that we now have downtown, which is a result of that relationship with the Downtown Alliance, is far greater. So and continues. We were in East Midtown, we were on the Upper East Side, and that was all great. But I kept saying, okay, well, that's all great, but these places have all sort of come back. People are okay. They can go and see art anytime they want in all of those places. But I was not going to stop until I could test it in a neighborhood where people don't necessarily have that easy access to art. They might not have the habit to go and see art. And so I said, I want to do another neighborhood. And we chose Washington Heights. And it was our most successful exhibition. In terms of sales, it was our most successful exhibition. In terms of impact, in terms of the people in the community and how they responded, we transformed an entire, from 169th to 170th, the entire block of Broadway was abandoned, and in a week it turned into an art gallery. From there we've gone to Inwood, and we've had that same result. So we're really happy about it, and it makes a lot of noise. We do get a lot of press attention, and what's next? Everybody's had a call to action, and my call is this. The Met has a ton of money, and we keep giving it even more money so that, I'm sorry, I'm controversial, I really am, so that rich people can go to the Met, or tourists. And I kind of feel like we could give money so that people in other communities can have access to art and can have businesses that are creative spaces where they can go and do things that.
Thank you.
I'm probably going to do the same thing here. And it's just the arrow one, right? To the right? Okay, great. Oh, no, that went. Do you build the slides?
Yeah. No, I don't.
Well then, we turned them. We did. It's okay. It's all right. It's okay. My name is Michelle Mendoza. I am the Vice President of Marketing and Customer Experience for Associated Supermarket Group. So we go by ASG. But ASG is a member of the CAPS, member of CAPS. And what CAPS stands for is the Collective Action to Protect Our Stores. And I love what I've heard here today, that everyone is, we're here to thrive and we're here to promote retail. And there has been a call in a number of your presentations for supermarkets and grocery stores. And in the request for supermarkets and grocery stores, and I love the examples of Wegmans earlier, which is a beautiful location downtown, I want to show that, I'm here to tell you that we're representing not only our independent group of supermarkets, but as a collective, as part of as part of CAPS, we also represent all of the other supermarkets, the independently owned and operated supermarkets in New York City, which earlier we saw a stat that people of color are 70% of the retail industry. And you can only imagine in the independent supermarket, these are communities, people of color, first, second generation store owners who are in need, here to provide and to create businesses and have taken the time to navigate through the city's bureaucracy and or the red tape to establish a business. And the challenge that these stores are starting to have, or we've all seen it, and originally I was actually going to include a video of what we keep seeing in social media, and this goes beyond the smash and grabs. We've all seen it, the retail theft aspect of it, and decided, you know what, I'm not going to continue to propagate what we are already seeing, but the challenge is that, yes, the luxury stores have been impacted with the way that that theft is happening. And as a whole, it's impacting all of us. It is a $4 billion problem just in the last year alone. But the supermarkets, who someone mentioned it earlier today, are operating on razor margin, extremely thin margins, sometimes even at 1%. And there are a little better numbers than that, otherwise they really wouldn't be in business. But the point is, the theft is still happening in these stores. And the theft is happening at a point where it no longer makes sense to do business in New York City, or you are actually putting your employees in harm's way because we've gotten to the point where there's no repercussion. People walk in, grab things, and walk themselves right back out. And there's a propagating issue of selling those stolen goods. So our ask today is to support 3 legislative bills that are currently with your elected officials. And we ask that you please support these bills. And, wonderful. If you don't mind going to, yes. I also want to mention, actually take a step back to that slide. We do want to thank the governor for allocating the resources, and for this year alone, $4 million are being put aside for retail theft. But remember that earlier I just said it's actually a $4 billion problem, but it's still, nonetheless, it's on the radar and in overall as part of the budget. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. So these are the Senate bills that we're asking you to please, and to the elected officials that are still in the room, to please support. They are bills 1644, which creates the offense of fostering the sale of stolen goods, bill of 4448, which raises a subsequent offense of grand larceny in the fourth degree, which, by the way, the issue of theft, there's a stat that we have in the last year alone, 364 were repeat offenders. That represents the 30% of the theft that's happening over and over again. And the last part being, the last bill being 5479, which elevates the assault of a retail employee to a Class D felony, which is equivalent to what the Department of Transportation, taxi drivers, and other small businesses are protected, or other transportation companies are, to put it in context, protected at that classification. So that is what we're asking for, is the support from your elected officials and the elected officials that may still be in the room to do that. And if you don't mind going to the very last slide, this is how we can ask you guys to learn more and to get involved. So please take an opportunity to scan the QR code or reach out. My contact information is here and listed on the agenda. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And again, I'm here to represent CAPS, which is the collective action to protect our stores. And the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce is a member of that. And collectively, we represent over 10,000 retail businesses, primarily in the food space. So thank you.
All right, so first of all, I'll just keep this brief. You did hear me, okay. So first of all, once again, just thanks to Jessica, the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce team, including Nadia, for putting on such an important event today. I'm the last speaker today. I will try to keep it brief, but also wanted to thank TD Bank for hosting us all in such a great space. I really appreciate it. So just very quickly, I'm Maya Kurian. I'm Vice President of Advocacy at the Real Estate Board of New York, otherwise known as REBNY, and I'm here today to talk about a campaign that we are part of along with the Chamber of Commerce and several other groups here today. So Nadia, how do I get to the, sorry, I should have asked for a primer on this before coming up here. Oh, that's not it. Okay, wrong deck. So very quickly, nope, not it, nope. Just cut the deck, sorry. I sent the wrong slide over, I apologize. But as we've heard from many here today, small businesses, we will talk about that topic quickly. As we've heard from many here today, small businesses are the key to jumpstarting New York's job growth. Vibrant storefronts and streetscapes are what make the city thrive, right? But businesses need the right environment and tools to succeed. So that is why we worked at REBNY with the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce and others here to launch the 5 Borough Jobs campaign back in 2020. And that was when we saw the need to pull together a bunch of groups to really fight for critical tax tools in order to support businesses and reduce vacant storefronts, right? So for the past few years, the 5 Borough Jobs campaign has continued to bring local chambers of commerce together, economic development corporations, business improvement districts, and more to first help identify what businesses need to succeed, and then advocate for those on the city and state levels. So an example of that is, we have the Downtown Alliance in the crowd. They're a member as well. All 5 chambers of commerce have joined. There are several bids throughout the city. If you're curious about knowing whether or not your bid is a member or you want them to join, feel free to find me after. We'd love to have them. So just very quickly in terms of what we're focused on, above all else, the 5 Borough Jobs campaign is fighting to bring new jobs to our communities and to create a more sustainable economic future for all. Last year, we once again fought to secure extensions to crucial tax incentives that support businesses across the 5 boroughs. And more specifically, they let those businesses stay where they are right now, open up in other parts of the city, and expand as needed, right? You guys need help, and we know that, and that's why we're here for you. This year, though, 5 Borough Jobs put together a 3-plank agenda to better inform policy needs and guide our efforts in 2025 and moving forward. First is retail theft. You just heard a lot about this from Michelle and the CAPS Coalition already, but just want to drive the point home that this is a concern for everybody, right? Including the state, including the city. You heard that from BJ as well. And we've been, hearing from many of our members that they hear from their constituents about its impact on their small businesses. And so we are working on amplifying those stories, including some coverage you might have seen in the city and the New York Business Journal, and we expect more stories in the coming weeks. So we are helping push that priority forward through advocacy in Albany and hoping to get that through the finish line this session. I will just say in terms of the state legislation we support, we're aligned with the CAPS Coalition in terms of their asks. Obviously, we know there's more needed to support small business owners, including financial help, and we're happy to talk about that too, but would love for others to join us and find out more if need be. At a more local level, we are also advocating for the City of Yes for economic opportunity. So BJ did speak about this earlier, but our coalition really believes that this is a rare chance for the city to modify outdated zoning regulations that really limit how businesses can succeed today. So we do need our zoning to offer common sense flexibility that can help local economies thrive and prevent empty commercial storefronts. And so doing so, we believe, also has the potential to diversify those storefronts and accommodate the jobs of both today and tomorrow, while also creating more opportunities for local artists to thrive, as we've just heard from Anita and I believe Barbara, right? That's great. So we fully intend to continue our push for common sense zoning reforms through the end of 2024, and we look forward to working with many of you to do so. Last but not least, for 5 Borough Jobs, I want to talk to you about transparency. So we are working on a series of local reforms designed to create more transparency and equitable access to information for business owners and to help guide our future policymaking initiatives in the future. And we can do this with 3 main reforms. The first is, I think you've heard today, right, there are a lot of fines that small business, oh, here we go. This is the 5 Borough Jobs campaign, nice colorful logos right on the left. Would love to have some of yours up there too. And the contact information is there if you want to get in touch with us or just want to learn more. So we are working, as I said, on these reforms, but the first is we've heard from many of you about the number of fines that small businesses are under, right? There are a lot of different ones that are issued to you at the start, during your business opening, and that can really, hinder a lot of what you do. So the first thing is, let's create a resource using geo-targeting to identify the impact that fines are having on our businesses. You all know more than most about the range and scale of fines from the city. And once again, they can be really devastating for businesses on the margins. Centralized information about what kinds of fines businesses receive, their frequency, and where those businesses are located will be essential to addressing their needs long term. The second thing is we want to codify a small business bill of rights. Business leaders and owners like you deserve a clear document that enumerates what protections and rights you have as you operate in your communities. This bill will be a user-friendly document that can include various things we hear from members that would help, including language around lease renewal notices or requiring paper leases. Finally, we want to require an economic impact study from the City Council on legislation and projects. So the idea behind this bill is that whenever the council deliberates on a bill or issue, we need an analysis of what kind of economic impact that bill will have. This is the kind of information that can show not just the benefits to a community district, but to the city at large. Jessica, in particular, has been a real leader on this issue, so I want to thank her for spearheading this effort, and I'm sure you'll hear more from her and many others on this slide in the coming weeks. So that's the 3-plank platform of the campaign. Retail Up, City of Yes for economic opportunity, and transparency for businesses. If this is something you'd like to work on advocating with us on, please do reach out. As I said, all the information is up there. That said, before I leave you in my capacity as REBNY, I do want to take a moment to just highlight a couple of things that REBNY is working on this year, and one of which is around creating more spaces for childcare centers. So last week, we, along with the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce and a few others in this room, launched Better Childcare NYC, a 5-point plan to build more childcare seats across this city. Now, I'm happy to send you more information on all 5 points, but the key things here is we need to fix a tax credit that already exists to allow more childcare centers to be built across the city. We need to streamline permitting for childcare centers, do wraparound inspection services to make sure that those childcare centers can be permitted sooner rather than later, make more space available for them to actually lease. Right now, they are limited on where they can actually open, and BJ actually alluded to some of the common sense zoning reforms that are needed to allow more of those childcare centers to open. And then, of course, set a standard and cut the red tape that makes it hard for childcare centers to operate during expanded hours, such as 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., or even longer if need be. The key for all of us as part of this conversation is to think about what potential that offers for some of our storefronts that might be able to be adapted into childcare centers with appropriate help from the city and the state. To reiterate, this campaign is separate, but if you were interested in learning more about Better Childcare NYC, please feel free to reach out to me afterwards. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention to all of you that a lot of the priorities people have focused on today, shutting down those illegal cannabis shops and making way for a more diversified retail sector, making sure we're thinking about more creative ways to fill our storefronts, and ensure that this remains a fun city to live, work, and play in. Those are priorities that REBNY shares, and our participation both in 5 Borough Jobs campaign, Better Childcare NYC, and of course our work with Manhattan Chamber are just a few of the ways in which we're doing so. So thank you for having me today. Look forward to speaking to you. And if you're interested in joining and learning more about the campaign, you saw the info, or I can send it your way. And thank you all again for your time.
made it. We made it to the end. Give yourselves all a round of applause. This has been a lot of information. I just want to close by saying thank you. We've got some great presenters and we heard some great things. I'm not going to go too far into anything, but just to let you know, it's something that we're thinking about as well. We are going to be launching an accelerator, retail. We call it our retail storefront accelerator to help successful e-commerce businesses get into a brick and mortar. So we're going to be sending out information to everybody after the event with information on how to share that information with businesses, but also we're going to need mentors. So a lot of the people in this room might want to be helpful. But in any case, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please go out there and find a good restaurant nearby to support. And we will certainly be in touch. Thank you, everybody.